Hello and welcome to another episode of Child Abuse Awareness with Darlene J. Clark. Be a part of the solution instead of part of the problem. This was in reference to John Ramsey. That's part two with Charles Rogers, codename Blackstone Lawyer. He's going to answer some questions. He's going to give us some information on how he knows some of the information that I have told y'all. So do not pass judgment. He's a survivor of when they tried to traffic him out. They tried to do these certain things to him. He knows this person personally. Hey there, Bucket List. Good to see you. Thanks for coming. Lots of love. And I get out there, put a trigger warning right here. So let's say a Bible verse in respect to JonBenet Ramsey also and all the other little kids that's hurt out there. In Matthew 18, verse 6, but whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea. Fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. In Colossians 3:21. We're just so in there that Proverbs 28, verse 5 says, evil men understand not judgment, but they that seek the Lord understand all things. Love you too. It's so good to see you. Hi, Jackie. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. Um, Blackstone is on the phone with me, so he can't see the chat. So I'll be asking him the questions. Maybe y'all will have some questions also. Uh, but I want to thank everybody for coming. Hey there, Eric. Good to see you. Thanks so much for coming in here. So Bucket List tells you hello, Blackstone, and I'm sure everybody else here that is listening right now is telling you hello as well.
Oh, hello, everybody. Nice to be on the program with you.
Can y'all hear him okay? If y'all can hear him okay, please put a one. Y'all can hear. If y'all can hear him okay, please hit a one. Wait to see if they can hear you. It's a little low, but all I can get is because let me try this, okay? Okay, try this. Try again, Charles. Try to talk, okay?
Okay, how do I sound now?
Can y'all answer? Is it better now? Or is it better when I put it over here? See if, okay, try again, Charles.
All right, does that sound better?
Does this sound better? This time or the other time? I moved it again, so I got to see if this way you heard them or not. Sound is good? Well, thank you. That's great. Jackie said, hey, Mr. Blackstone, I love your accent and voice.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I put it closer to where, at the very front. So I guess that's where I need to start putting the phone at, right here, closer to the edge. All right. So a lot of people dispute you and call you crazy. There's a lot that's around you that they kind of go against what you say and all. But we're giving you a voice. And I want to ask you some certain questions here, okay?
Sure.
At first, how did you become, what made you decide? Explain to people what Blackstone Lawyer means.
Well, it's a legal definition, and um, um, you know, Black's Law Dictionary and other law dictionaries. Practitioner of Blackstone Law, which is the British and American common law, and
Which means you
I
don't have to be a lawyer. You be your own
yeah,
lawyer, in other words, right?
yes, ma'am. You have the ability to speak on your behalf and exercise constitutional and common law.
Can you tell some of the people what you had done um, as far as legal wise for yourself, what you helped get out there into a law?
Well, back in 2005, with the help of a certain individual that was at one point in his life involved in domestic terrorism, we partnered up in 2005 and formed a coalition for children in Marietta, Georgia. And our mission was to get the death penalty passed for child rape. Um, in addition to getting Megan's Law adopted into the Georgia Code, since I am from Georgia, Cobb County to be exact. So during my 25-year investigation into the corruption of Cobb County, I have been pretty much living, like a civilian, working like a civilian, like I was before I got stuck with a job that I really didn't want to be stuck with from the beginning, but um, it was out of my control. I really had no choice, either die or do it.
Right.
So I wound up becoming pretty much the top counterterrorism expert in the United States. In my year and a half of working with the FBI under the Honorable Louis Freeh, director of the FBI.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to also tell people and do a little flash of his life. You can go back to some of his other recordings we have on my channel, Blackstone Lawyer or Charles Rogers. And I would reiterate, it first started with him with the ice cream man back when how old were you then?
If I remember correctly, I was only 3 years old in Naples,
Yeah.
Florida.
And he knew not to go to the ice cream man that tried to coax him to get on, to come to him and give him free ice cream. The little girl who told him, a neighbor told him it was okay to trust him. Then guess what? She went missing a couple days later. So
Yes.
he had kidnapped the little girl next door. So he saved himself. And so all the parents had wanted him to teach their kids, and from a kid's standpoint, a kid listening to kids, on why it's not good to go do that kind of thing. When
Yeah, I
somebody
was
turns,
still learning how to. I was still learning how to talk, so I had to have my mom and siblings kind of help. They could kind of understand what I was saying, and they would translate. But it was actually my first time of actually talking with other children. Um, After I helped the police locate the girl who had been, in fact, abducted.
was she alive? Do you know if she was alive or not?
Yes, ma'am. She was recovered safely.
Praise God for that.
Mm-hmm. And uh, they even had a reporter from the newspaper come out to the house and interview my mom and me, and they were just a lot of people was just amazed that this little 3-year-old boy knew that when he saw the police down the street inquiring about her disappearance that I went in and approached some of the detectives, and they couldn't really understand me, but the one he could understand me enough that I knew what had happened to her. Because this guy, um, he was giving her free ice cream, grooming her up to where he could give her free ice cream the whole time she rode in the van with him. And um, air conditioning was broke in the house. It was hot, and my mom, she liked watching her soap operas, so she didn't like to hear any sound out of his children. So I would always go next door and hang out under the carport at the neighbor's house. And they proved it. They didn't have any problem with it. What's a 3-year-old child going to do at your house if he's just going to stand under the carport?
I think I still think it's really funny. Um, I'm really proud of your mama, how she told the guy, to like leave that child alone. He said no. Woman, man, mind your own business, right? He was trying to get on to your mama and saying, well, mind your own business. I got a right to do this to the kid. He's nothing to you. Leave us alone.
Yeah, he was like, lady, you mind your own business. He's not your son, so mind your own business. And she goes, well, he is to my son, and I'm going to call the police. So I'm still kind of wondering all along, why the police didn't know right off the bat from the beginning that it was actually the ice cream guy. Because when he came down the street that day, he didn't have any music playing, didn't have the bell ringing or nothing, Because back then they always had the little bell ringing and the music and stuff
right.
like that. And, but my family had always taught me not to accept candy or ice cream from strangers. And especially an ice cream guy. So he was very persistent, when he pulled up there and he stopped in front of the neighbor's driveway and looked over at me and said, hey, little boy, you want some free ice cream? Come here, I'll give you some free ice cream. And I was like, no, thank you. And he kept persisting me, to come out there and I wouldn't do it. And he just wouldn't leave.
Yes.
And, I guess until I would come out there and get it. My mom, she looked out the window and saw him sitting there in front of the neighbor's driveway talking back and forth to me. And that's when she decided to get up and go open the front door and, see what this guy was wanting and sit there listening to him trying to, coerce me into coming out there to the street to get my free ice cream. And I wouldn't do it.
Right. And let's go ahead.
She was like, you leave that little boy alone. He does not want your ice cream. And he goes, lady, mind your own business. He's not your child. And she goes, well, I got news for you. He is to my child, and I'm going to call the police. And she did.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and fast forward a while now. So, years later, we know about the gym studs. We know about him working. If they want to hear that, they could go back and listen to the full story on that without us having to elaborate further on everything that transpired right now with Jim Stubbs when he was trying. That was actually a brother-in-law to Edward Bentley. Is that right?
Yes, George Edward Bentley Jr., known as Ed Bentley.
Or the Bentley Farms over there?
Yes, ma'am. He is the CEO of Bentley Enterprises in Marietta.
Right.
He manufactures the silencers for the U.S. government. So he's a DOD contractor like John Ramsey. That's why they're such great friends.
Yeah, so how did you initially meet up with John Ramsey?
Well, my brother Fred, he took on a job at Layton Graphics there in Marietta. And when he first went to work for them, they were doing data entry into the microchip computer software for a lot of the local governments. Well, the United States government decided that they were going to shut down the micro production in the United States in 1984. So they gave the two top film companies, Kodak and Polaroid, the opportunity to develop the best film they could use for the microfilm industry. Well, I don't know his real name, but he goes by Dale Montegraph.
Montegraph. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this guy, he used to work the Kodak booths in Marietta, Smyrna, and certain parts of Atlanta.
But he didn't own it though himself, did he? He just worked there.
Well, he was like way up there in Kodak. So when he found out that Polaroid had the higher quality film, he jumped ship from Kodak over to Polaroid. And John Ramsey and him, they're the ones who designed the microfilm computer software for Lockheed Martin and the United States government. And Lakeland Graphics they did the work for Cobb County.
Right.
So John, he volunteered his services. That's why there was no trace of him, training the technicians at Lakeland Graphics, this computer software. But he did for Polaroid. He volunteered his services to train the 4 technicians that worked for Mr. Lakeland, my brother Fred Rogers and Roger Nance.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question too? Did you say something about how Kodak, or was it Kodak, or was it the other one where they would, like we would take pictures of our kids way back in the 60s, 70s, whatever, and take pictures of our kids, in their bathing suit, birthday suits, and everybody thought it was so cute to always have a kid, like in a bathtub or something, or laying on their belly and take a picture of them like that. What did these sickos do? With the pictures that were supposedly so innocent, right?
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, that was common for parents to do that because nobody really thought much of it, and they trusted the people at Kodak whenever they dropped off their proofs to have them develop, that they wouldn't have to worry about these pictures being sold on the black market, which they were indeed developing them and selling them over in Europe and other countries without the parents' knowledge.
And it was not for the purpose of it being a cute kid, a blessed kid, but it was sicko pornography people that would really enjoyed babies, thinking about doing these little bitty babies.
Yeah, and that's how it really was handled. They would take these pictures, they would sell them in the black market overseas, so they would make money from the developing the pictures here in the United States and sell them in the black market overseas. So they made money, hand over fist, develop them for the people here, and then of course from selling the more explicit, pictures, overseas in the black market. And then, of course, they like to restrict our, pronunciations and say, but it's pretty much child pornography. I'm going to come out and say it. So they got into making the movies, the smut movies, and stuff like that. And it was people like Dale Montegraph and John Ramsey who were working together when Bonnie was working for Kodak, who were producing these smut movies.
And did you say, or do you know whether or not, like when they would make these percent movies, because you know what I said had happened to me because of that state trooper that said that he remembered me because I was in his daddy had over 300 and I was in the majority of them. Did they ever have to, when they made those kind of films, did they have to send them off to something like Kodak or Polaroid for the reel to reel at first, or how was that done? Whether they could just go ahead and put the tape in themselves of the reel to reel?
Ramsey handled all of that. I mean, these guys did the personal, Monty, he personally developed the photographs. Okay, he worked a little Kodak booth where the people would drop off the cruise. And him and this other guy that worked them, they would take them and they would develop them. And the people would come by the little booths and they would, pick up the pictures and the proofs, take them home and think that would be the end of it. Well, they were also, Kodak produced the film for the movie industry. So they're the ones that developed everything. Um, the films of the child pornography and the pictures of the child pornography.
See, there goes the connection with what happened to me and these sickos right here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Marietta was like, their main base operation. Back before I guess, probably even before I was even conceived. For all I know, in 1972, my dad, was forced to hire Jim Stubbs, and that was his purpose of trying to lure me over there to Bentley Farm, was where he could use his 5-year-old daughter to start having intimate relations with me. That occurred somewhat in the bathtub when he finally managed to get me to come over and spend the night there. I believe was in November before Christmas, just before my 7th birthday. And then, of course, after the first year, more toward, I think, like late February, early March, he got me back over there to the farm again. And they were trying to get me to go in this barn, wooden barn, because they had a concrete barn and concrete horse stall stairs as well. And house they also had to tear down. 19.
Hard to believe how many times they had to keep replacing the barns, tearing them down and rebuilding, or they're catching fire mysteriously and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, they definitely need to be in the Guinness Book of World Records, where the farm with the most burned and reburned barns in U.S. history, for the amount of barns that have been burned on that place through the past 50, 50 or more or less years. I know that in the 1978 court settlement between my dad and, we called George Bentley the dad, Ed George Jr. goes by Ed. That's how everybody kept those two separated, called the dad George and the son Ed, or Fast Eddie.
And the daddy also was into pornography, child porn, and hurting little kids too, right?
Well, yes, ma'am. He had adopted his niece after her parents got killed in an automobile accident, I believe, remember correctly, back in 1953, when she wasn't quite 10 years old. And then, of course, according to her, he wound up sexually abusing her. And had her doing things, with her adopted brother, who was her first cousin, by blood, but by adoption, her, younger brother. And, I really, really feel sorry. If I remember correctly, her name was Teresa. I really, really feel sorry for that poor lady. Just how her family treated her.
And then And I remember how when you described that, and he said, "Are you going to go take a bath with my daughter?" And you knew that you better say yes. You just knew that it ain't the matter that you wanted to. It's a matter of you having the sense enough to know that you would be in danger. How old were you at this percent time when that happened?
I was 6.
Well, you're very intuitive. You're at a young age, evidently. And then what was this he had said when you said yes? And I'm gonna let the people know just a little bit of the little bit of what was said, and then we'll go on to the next thing because we got a lot to cover today.
Hmm. Yeah, he told me that it was a good thing that I had said yes at that point, because if I had said no, he would immediately yank me up from the dinner table and taken me outside and beat my head in with a shop handler, and would have told my parents that I ran off.
He would have been killed. He would have been killed.
Yes.
And
And
see,
I
this guy was actually working for. You go back and to find out more information. He was actually working for Charles's dad, and he kind of like groomed Charles. But Charles did not want to be hanging around him anymore. And his daddy found out later out, found out why. And well, Jim is not with us no more. You have to read what some of the listen to some of the other videos, and you find out what transpired there when he actually tried to come after Charles and tried to shoot him. Um, and so he's the one that didn't make it. It was not Charles that did it. It was, and then the police knew about it and everything as well. So, but all that's been handled and everything. So we're going to get on to find out more where it ties in between John Ramsey and Beth Ramsey. Beth Ramsey is JonBenet's older sister who died a couple of years before JonBenet.
Yeah, again, back before my 18th birthday in 1983, um, my sisters decided that she was going to sell me her 1977 Grand Prix. She had just purchased a 15th edition first Oldsmobile. Um, it was used, even though it was a 1983 model. I think it only had like 2,000 miles on it when she bought it. So she decided that she would sell me her old cars. She didn't trade it in. She kept it, decided she would sell it to me for $2,200. Well, I had to wait until my 18th birthday for her to co-sign on the loan for me to get it, because Kennesaw Finance would not finance, anything for someone less than 18 years of age. So she went ahead and gave me car keys, and Fred, he was so excited that I got the keys to the Grand Prix.
Hold on a minute. For people to tell, Fred was a bad brother where he was working along with these bad culprits. But this was his, I think, an older brother as well. You had two older brothers, right?
Yes, ma'am. I'm the youngest child of 4. A sister, Karen's the oldest. My brother Bill, with me, Rogers Jr., he's the oldest son. And then, of course, my brother Fred was named after my grandfather, George Frederick Rogers, who was a trolley car conductor for Georgia Power from, I think, 1912 until 1953 or 54, whenever they shut down the trolley cars that ran from Marietta down to Atlanta every day. So Fred was named after my paternal grandfather. My first name was after my, you know, great grandfather, Charles Edgar Rogers, who was the railroad engineer that put the railroads through western North Carolina into eastern Tennessee, who had been murdered by a black man up in Ducktown, Tennessee, and he is buried in Turtletown, Tennessee. So I'm from the group of Rogerses from up there in the tri-state area.
Was that because he was?
Georgia.
Was that possibly because they was thinking that you was going to be stealing part of his land or something with the railroad, or what was it?
Yes, ma'am. They brought the railroad through this guy's land, and he got upset, and they saw my grandfather in town, and he decided to cut him in the stomach. So the doctor took him and did surgery on him, stitched him up, and laid him in bed and put 2 bricks on each side of his head, and to where told him whatever he do, not to fall asleep, because if his head turned in a direction, he would die. Well, of course, when he fell asleep, his head moved and it killed him instantly. So
Yeah.
it caused a huge conflict over there. They wound up chasing the black community out of that part of Tennessee, chased them over into Murphy, North Carolina, which is like a rock throws away from Ducktown and Turtletown, Tennessee, there by Upper Hill, Tennessee, which is really the same town as McCaseville, Georgia. They're just separated by a river there at the Georgia-Tennessee line. But my grandfather's brother, Mac, they had to go to Dawsonville and stay with an uncle for a while. Then they wound up having to come down to Roswell, Georgia, and stay with a family that ran the Georgian newspaper in Atlanta.
Right.
And they wound up marrying 2 sisters of the Davis family of East Cobb. And that's pretty much where they settled down at.
Oh, okay.
Uncle Mackie had like 13 children. And
wow.
My grandfather, he had 11. So,
wow.
Yeah, so, we're pretty good families.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I took you back to a little bit further, and we go back to get back with how about John Ramsey and Beth Ramsey.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, the first, like I told you before, the first attempt on my life was at 9 years of age.
Right. By Jim Stubbs, right?
Jim Stubbs was arrested in 1973 by Officer Bill Galloway at the Cobb County Police Department before he was taken in custody. He made the statement to my dad that my dad could probably protect the rest of his family from him, but he would never be able to do anything to stop him from getting to me and killing me, that he would make certain if he killed nobody else in the family, he would make certain that he would kill me. So that's why my dad wound up having to purchase 2 cattle ranches up in Fannin County, Georgia, instead of going up into Ducktown, Tennessee, and Turtletown up in that area. Right. Because he was doing all these major developments around Cobb County. And you're talking like around an 89-mile drive from Marietta there to Morganton, Georgia, which back then the only route you could take was Highway 5. But today you have, Interstate 575 that changes into 515 and runs up in there as a 4-lane now, and changes into Highway 76, which was the old Highway 76 that we wound up moving to. There was this kid that lived up in Murphy by the name of Danny Hughes.
Yes.
He came to ball games. Murphy would play us over in Morganton, and my dad would treat both ball teams to the Tasty Freeze and buy all the food and drinks and all that for everyone that went to the Tasty Freeze. And well, Danny Hughes got to go over there and stuff his face, of course. And he's the one who actually wound up leading Jim Stubbs to the area. He didn't know exactly where our ranch was, but he knew that we lived right there, not far from the old elementary school there, what is now the old Highway 76.
I guess at the time, Danny Hughes probably didn't know that Jim Stubbs was as bad of a person as he is, right? As he was.
Well, I wouldn't say that because Danny, when you look at the 1981 homicide of 12-year-old Patrick Baltazar, victim number 18 of the Atlanta child murders,
right?
That is very much Danny Hughes.
Oh, wow.
So, I really think that their pedophile network was already had its connections to people up in that area. For how long, I don't know, but I know that it was Danny Hughes. Whenever they couldn't find out where we lived, they turned toward their friends up in, the tri-state area to find out if anyone up there knew where we lived at. And it was the Hughes family was like, well, yeah, our son knows whereabouts he lives. And of course, that's how Jim Stubbs was actually able to locate us. And he did try to shoot me and my dad. And of course, Officer Bill Galloway, who followed him all the way up there from Marietta that day, he got to put 2 bullets in him. And our ranch hand, Johnny Davenport, got to put some buckshot in him with his shotgun. So Jim is still buried 20 feet deep below a dead cow, or 20 feet below the ground, but around 13 feet below a dead cow when my dad buried him up there, because he didn't want to deal with a headache of possibly being indicted, because he took the track hoe that Stubbs had worked for him. He took it up there to his farm to do some work, and also to where he would know dang good and well which farm we were at, because he was tired of having to deal with this mess of driving, 90 miles just in one direction, come from Morganton down to his developments in Marietta. So he wasn't able to stay with us all the time. He would have to stay with his mother.
Right.
During his development. So,
kind of like a trap. Kind of like a trap for him, but, it ended up, he didn't get what he wanted, thank God.
Well, that's the reason why he bought 2 cattle ranches. And where he did take us to the other house on the other ranch. He had to purchase my mom a passenger van to use so he could leave her automobile there at the one we lived at. So he knew he would make his way to the right spot, to the right place, and he could deal with it then. And he did.
Right.
And of course, there was an investigation.
How does this now tie into years later? Because we did talk about this earlier on this murder thing. So now let's go fast forward into the when you got with John Ramsey, or when?
Yes, ma'am. That was 3 days before my 18th birthday, and my brother Fred, he had convinced me to go with him over to Lakeland Graphics and meet the guys that he worked with and that he worked for. So I was like, well, sure, why not? He was going to be my chauffeur for the night, and wanted to go to bars. I didn't want to go to any bars. I wanted to go to a theater and see a movie or something. Last thing on my mind was wanting to go out and do any kind of drinking, or I'd never been to a bar in my life.
Right.
So So right before we arrived, we came the way of Barrett Road, from that way around Blackjack Mountain from Sandy Plains Road. And just before we arrived there, he goes, well, another cool thing is I'm going to introduce you to one of the guys who was involved in the Atlanta child murders. And I'm like, well, good grief, why in the world would I want to be him? This is not like somebody that I really care about me. And he said, oh, you'll like him. He's cool and all that. Well, I'm sorry, but I just don't find child murderers cool. They're not, never have been the kind of people I ever wanted to associate myself with, because if they were, well, I'd gone over there and tried to buddy up with Ed Bentley Jr. and his dad. If that were the case. But Layton Graphics located where the Arrow exterminators are located there. Today they're at the corner of Woolco and Gresham Road, which also changes into Merritt. And runs out there and borders part of Bentley Farm. Cross sects with, Barnes Mill Road, and runs on out to Allgood Road, where deads into. And I told him, I said, well, I really don't want to meet this guy. Oh, it'll be all right. You'll like him. You'll find out he's a pretty cool guy. So we pull in to Lake Graphics. We get out of the car, and of course, Roger's there, Roger Nance. And I don't remember the names of the other two technicians. They were there. And just right after we arrived, here comes John holding up in his little Volvo station wagon.
John Ramsey.
Yes, ma'am. John Ramsey. He gets out, and all the guys come down. They're all glad to see that John's there, this, that, and the other. Instead of going upstairs and hanging around in the office, they all decided to come down. And they decided was going to step out across the street by the post office there. Do some talking where we wouldn't be on, view of the cameras around the building. So Mr. Lake couldn't hear what was being said when he viewed footage, if he did. So we go over there, the six of us, and they're sitting there, and they're talking about all these children that John Ramsey had murdered. And so, I had asked him if he had been down there at the Chattahoochee the night that I went down there to plead for the safe return of my brother and Roger Nance, when they were supposedly being forced to engage in two child sacrifices. And he said he was, but he didn't say anything that. They wanted to hear the stories about the children that he had murdered elsewhere, the girls that he had murdered.
Who is they that wanted to hear it?
Fred, Roger, and the other two technicians.
Okay.
So he's sitting there and he's telling them these stories out up in Michigan, New York, and Ohio, kid murdered. And said his buddies Mike and Bill would be there in a little bit, and they would tell some more of their stories about the children they had also murdered with him, and this, that, and the other. And so I'm really feeling kind of uneasy there at one point when he's talking about this stuff. But he starts talking about this one girl that um, he had abducted and kept for about 2 or 3 days, and then took her out and shot her in the face with a shotgun. And
Is that Jill Robinson right there?
yes, ma'am, that was Jill Robinson. And I can't remember too much of the details about what he said, but the way that he said that he just threw her on the ground and pulled the shotgun on her and shot her in the face. My brother Rod and Roger, the two technicians, they busted out laughing like this stuff was funny. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing and what I was hearing. I couldn't believe I was witnessing that kind of conduct out of my older brother. And so they asked him about the one girl who had got away, if he was going to wind up having to go to prison and face some time or what. And he had made the statement that he had got with his buddies in Washington who were working on trying to take offense to parents and her not to press charges against them. And so I asked him, I was like, well, what happened with that? And he goes, well, I was in this little town near Huntington, West Virginia, and I stopped at this ice cream parlor that didn't have any inside seating. And this little blonde girl had just purchased her some ice cream. So I offered to ride my automobile where her ice cream wouldn't melt. I could drive her around town and she could enjoy her ice cream before it melted because it was a really hot day.
They asked you how old you were at this time.
I wasn't even 18. This is, like I said, just before my 18th birthday. I was
Okay.
still 17 years old. And instead of driving around town, he took a side road, took her out in the country at the base of a mountain into a clearing there, and forced her into the back seat of the station wagon and proceeded in, trying trying to get her clothes off. And I said, but he failed to remove her chinny snickers. And because he failed to remove her chinny shoes, she was able to get the footing on the carpet and the seat and knee him in the groin.
I like that.
Yeah, and elbowed him in the ribs a couple of times and hit him and actually succeeded in getting away.
And he couldn't catch up to her, so she actually got away. Praise God.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the kind of stuff that my brother Fred used to get other kids to say and all that about other kids to get me in a fight. So I'm sitting there listening to this guy sit there and talk about the stuff like it's funny. So I looked at him. I said, well, Mr. Ramsey, is it okay if I call you John? Yeah, you can call me John. I said, okay, John. How old are you? Well, of course he lied. He goes, well, I'm I just turned 36. Why? I said, so let me get straight. You were trying to rape this little girl? He goes, yeah. I had got her shorts down somewhat and was trying to get her panties down whenever she gained her footing. And, I'm not going to say what he said.
Right.
But I would say it had something to do with almonds. But anyway.
Right.
And I said, so what you're saying is that you got your butt whooped by an 11-year-old blonde. And the other guys were like looking like that. So, I'm not even 18 years old yet. And that means that I could whoop your butt from here over to Tip Top Poacher with one hand tied behind my back. All of a sudden, Fred, Roger, and the other guys are like, huh? Fred comes over. He goes, here a minute. Walks over. He goes, what do you mean telling Mr. Ramsey that you could whoop his butt with one hand tied behind your back? I said, well, Fred, every time you ever wanted me to get in a fight with other kids was, how we start making fun of other children and doing bad things to other children every time you ever wanted to see me fight back in Marietta Christian. Well, Mr. Ramsey, he's sitting over there. He hears that and goes, Fred, that's no big deal. That's kind of admirable. You mean you used to get this, you used to provoke your little brother into fighting with this kind of stuff? And Fred was like, well, yeah, I have provoked fights with him over stuff like this. He goes, well, it's cool. It's understandable now. Maybe he really thought that, you were trying to provoke a fight between us. Is that right? And I'm like, well, yes, John. That's the way I was taking it. Well, Fred, there's no harm. He's playing off like it's all cool, And right after that, that's whenever Mike McLaughlin, who is Magistrate Mike McLaughlin today, arrived in his 1970 Buick Centurion with Franklin Delano Floyd in the passenger seat, who I was introduced to as Bill Ramsey.
Bill Ramsey, yeah.
Yeah.
I did a live on him the other day, and he had a big history of murdering kids.
Big time. And, I've been given the Cincinnati Police Department total cane over that, because when you look at the composite sketch of the suspect who abducted Miss Carter and her two children, it's just no dispute that it's Frank Floyd.
Right.
And of course, Judge McLaughlin is the one who actually murdered her in front of her 2 and 4-year-old daughters.
Who did?
Judge McLaughlin.
And he's still a magistrate there in Cobb County too, right?
Yes, ma'am. He used to be the dean of the magistrate. Now, the first time I saw Mike McLaughlin, I was on the back of the school bus in 1980. I was still in the 8th grade at Mabry Middle School. And we lived off of Ebenezer Road at the time, just right down the road from the sheriff of Cobb County, Bill Hudson. Which, of course, Bill's cousins, Charles and Richard, used to build houses with my dad. But we used to live by this road called Knight Road that runs over to Blackwell Road, where the Transfiguration Catholic Church is located today that was under construction back then. They built that church in 1980 and completed in 1981. And so I'm right on the back of the school bus, and as usual, we go around the curve, and I'm sitting down looking out the back window. I see these 2 cars, golden brown Buick and a partly primered green Chevy Chevelle, think like a late model 1960. I'm racing around the curve, and the Chevelle runs into the brick mailbox of the sister of Sheriff Bill Hudson. So I got my bus driver to let me off there at the corner, because our driveway was like maybe 250 feet past that turnoff on the left. And I used to have to ride the bus all around in that circle, because my bus driver would not let me out there on the corner. I had to wait till my bus stop. Well, because of this accident, she let me off there at the corner where I could get the people who lived in the corner house, to call the operator, um, and paramedics to come out there. And that's what I did. She let me off on the corner. I went and knocked on the door. Lady came to the door, and I asked her, to call the police and paramedics. There was an accident up the road. A car ran into a brick mailbox that was racing with another vehicle, and I was going to go up there and see if I could assist in the situation.
Going to find out it was not really a race. It was somebody trying to get away from McLaughlin, right?
That's right. So I go walking up there. He's over there trying to get that driver's side door open. I mean, it knocked the engine back into the dash of that automobile. He hit that brick mailbox so hard. He knocked it about at least, good grief, 12 feet from where it, originally sat at. That's how fast they were going.
Wow.
I thought they were racing. So he finally gets the door open right when I get there. And right before he goes in to reach and grab the guy, it's like, hey, man, I don't know if I would move your buddy if I were you. He doesn't look like he's in the condition to be moved. At least wait until the ambulance gets here. Well, of course, he disregards that. He goes, mind your own business, kid. He grabs this guy out. Right before he grabs him out of the car, he turns around, goes over and opens the passenger door of his car, drags the guy out, slides him over, puts him in the passenger seat, shuts his door, goes walking around, get in the driver's side, and he goes, kid, you better not say anything to the police or you're dead. Well, heck, I'm standing in front of the sheriff of Cobb County's house. I've already had the lady down at the corner to call the police and paramedics, and when you're 14 years old, what do you do?
Right.
You're going to tell the police what you saw. So he cranks up, he pulls off. Well, I didn't have books or anything with me to write his tag number down, but I knew he had a Tennessee license plate on his car because he's from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yes, he is. He's from Knoxville. I did research on Judge McLaughlin. Yes, he's originally from Knoxville.
Yes. So that was my first encounter with Judge McLaughlin. So my second encounter was when he brought Frank Floyd over there to Leighton Graphics. And he had just started his job at the magistrate court and pretrial services. And had just got an apartment, and he told my brother at Ramsey's that he had to go because he just got his apartment. He had just started his job at the courthouse that week.
Uh-huh.
So he had some things he needed to go do. So he left Floyd there with us, and of course, I was introduced, as Fred's little brother to, a buddy, not his brother, Bill Ramsey, but they were just friends, just had the same last name. So we walked over to Tip Top Poetry there in the parking lot. We're still waiting on Mr. Layton to come to his business, by the way.
How did you spell the Layton name?
Layton.
Okay, kind of like there's a car dealership that it's called Layton Chevrolet, Layton Chevrolet or something like that.
Mm-hmm. No, now this is the way it sounds.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So we're still waiting on Mr. Layton to arrive. So we're standing over there, and they're talking about these, cases that they, other children they had murdered from, up there in New York, Oakland County, Ohio, and they was talking about their most well, let me back up. Before they got to Mary Carter, Fred and Roger asked them how they met. So I got to hear it out of both of them. John was in Rochester, New York. Floyd was living in Rochester, New York. And John was at a sales convention at this motel. So at the end of the meetings that day, he decided he was going to leave the motel and drive out to see if he could find him a date or a victim. He figured if he could find a woman he could date, he would bring her back to the motel with him. But if not, he was going to find him a teenager or a young girl, to rape and murder. And so he drove down this road by this supermarket and decided to take a left into the neighborhood that went in back behind it because it was a pretty good-sized supermarket and, quite a bit of foot traffic in the area. You could figure he could find him a female victim back in that neighborhood. So he goes driving back and he saw this blue Dodge van, if I remember, that's what he described. And he saw, of course, he said Bill, which was Frank, out there with this, brunette girl trying to force her into the side door of his van. And she was putting up a fight, about to get away. And he saw that Floyd was going to need some help. So he goes rushing over there, jumps out of his car to go to help Floyd. Floyd thought he was coming to help the girl. So he pulls a knife and he tries to stab Ramsey. And Ramsey goes, "No, don't try to stab me. I'm not here to help her. I'm here to help you because she's about to get away." And that's how those two started their partnership and friendship right there.
Very sickos.
That was 12-year-old Carmen Colon, the first victim of the alphabet murders.
Wow.
Well, then, of course, they wound up getting my cousin Robert up there. He's like 18, 19 years old. And I later found this out, that Robert got up there and was also involved with them in the rest of the girls there in the alphabet murders and some of the other murders that they were committing over in Ohio whenever they got over there. And they even told about the case of 28-year-old Mary Carter. How Floyd had met her at a convenience store while she was waiting on a bus to go, I think, to some family member's house or something to visit. And he offered her and two daughters to ride in his pickup truck, his Ford pickup truck. And of course, she sat there kind of bragged about his Ford pickup. But he took her and her children back to his house where Doug McRae and Francis W. Sheldon were at with Michael Baldwin. So after he arrived there with her and her children, Ramsey came forward in behind him because she was wanting to leave, demanding him to take her where she needed until John arrived.
Hold on for a second. Hold on, everybody, for a minute. Okay, are you there? Are you there? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it was an important phone call, so I had to take it real quick.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, everybody.
So anyway, um, according to them, and later, according to Judge McLaughlin, um, he decided to rape her there in front of her two daughters and wound up murdering her in front of her two daughters. Well, even Doug McRae told me this in 1996 after I got to Murphy, North Carolina, or actually 97. Um, Somewhere in there that that he had said something to one of the little girls, and she got ballistic, and that's whenever McLaughlin them forced her inside, Floyd's house, and he went in there and murdered her in front of her two children. So they felt sorry for the two girls after seeing their mother killed. They decided not to do anything harmful to them, but to take them with their mother, dump her body over near an intersection on the road a distance from Frank's house. Well, I say
Wow.
Floyd's house because Sheldon was there, and Sheldon went by Frank too. Um, and of course, he was already wanted by the FBI for the Norfolk Island pedophile ring that John Ramsey's dad helped him set up. So he was already a wanted man. So
That's why I got confused at times, and I said, "Okay, which Frank? Which Frank?" Since there were two
yeah,
Franks, like which one?
yeah, they were both there whenever 28-year-old Mary Carter was murdered. Frank Sheldon and Frank Floyd.
Oh boy.
And
And so can you? I get to the part about where you actually met um, Beth Ramsey, right? And
yeah,
the thing about it is, you said how you met her and stuff, but the initial meeting when y'all first went, and then her boyfriend, we got to say her name is Beth Patricia Ramsey. Is that what her name is?
her name was Elizabeth Posh Ramsey.
Okay, Elizabeth Posh Ramsey. Okay. And you said she worked for the airlines?
Yeah, she worked for Delta Airlines. She had a part-time job at a bar there where she lived that close to Chicago.
Right. And then her boyfriend, Matt Darrington, what kind of work did he do?
It was in computer sales and marketing.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And see, when she finally came in there and she ended up letting her boyfriend tell you, because Beth did not want to speak of what atrocities happened to her. Would you mind telling everybody what Matt Darrington had shared with you about how Beth was treated?
Uh-huh. Yeah, actually, um, I met him the second day after she located me. I used to work at the Waffle House, Unit 479, there in Marietta, from 1988. Now, I had worked at other locations, but that was the last one that I had worked at before I went to working with my Uncle Morris Beach, selling Kirby vacuum cleaners. That, we worked out of Marietta, but we went out to Athens, Georgia, Gainesville, Georgia, and would sell out there because the sales were just hot in that area back then. That my boss wound up letting this other guy, Danny, I forgot his last name, take over the Marietta office, and he opened up another office there in Athens, and I got promoted to what they call a field counselor, like a field manager. I was responsible for training my representatives they hired, going out, knocking them in a home, coming in behind them and closing homes, training them to where they can get out and go on their own and still make overrides off of their sales. So, um, this was around a couple of weeks after I had became a witness against members of Cobb County Police Department, 4th Precinct, Sergeant Glenn Turner, and some of the other officers under his command. He's the same one that got poisoned um, in 1995 by ethylene glycol, antifreeze, and his wife, Glenn Turner, wound up getting convicted for it.
Wow.
But Sergeant Glenn Turner was a homicide suspect when he was murdered. And,
That's one way they shut him up, right?
well, yes, no, they called themselves the Rat Pack. This was like this rogue police gang of the 4th Precinct. They was into any and everything. Um, I won't go too much into details on that because I did try to get them busted back in 1987 down at the Crystal Palace in Atlanta, Georgia, because they were stealing drugs from drug dealers at Riverbed Apartments and selling them to the drug dealers down at Crystal Palace. And so I really wasn't their favorite guy because the reason why they were called the Rat Pack was because they was tied in with my cousin Robert Deeds and Ed Bentley. So I did try to get them busted because they were cops.
Right.
And, with Atlanta Police Department, tried to get Atlanta PD to bust them. Or at least Mike Archer. So I wasn't on their favorite list.
Yeah, I can imagine not.
Yeah. Um,
But that
so,
really was interesting me, that second time when instead of, we went over before people could listen to that video, on how you initially met Beth. And I want to get to the part where, she did end up holding JonBenet Ramsey and she fell in love with her, and she wanted to protect her. But we can hear about that in a few minutes too. But I want you to tell what Matt Darrington actually did say to you that Beth let her, that gave you, gave him.
Back at the same Waffle House, later the following evening, like around 8:30, 9 o'clock, I was borrowed a buddy of mine's 1971 Cutlass convertible. He would let me use anytime I needed to borrow it because he used to work for him, repairing automobiles. So I never had any problem if I didn't have transportation, borrowing transportation from him. Well, he's the one who I bought my little Mazda from, and he was having to do work on it. Some gasket on the back of the engine that was leaking oil. He had to go back and repair it. So he loaned me his Cutlass to use while he was fixing my automobile. So that's the vehicle I was driving whenever I met, Beth, was his Cutlass.
Yeah.
So I went back the following night, and that's when Matt had driven down from Chicago because she had let him know the previous evening that she did finally get in contact with me. They had looked for me for over 3.5 months there at that Waffle House, and would go in there time to time when they were in town together and see if anybody had heard from me, which they hadn't, because I was just really busy for like 8-9 months straight. Out there in Athens until I witnessed this poor guy lose his life on a motorcycle one night when he ran into a cow there in Maysville, Georgia. And that was the second death that second time I'd seen anyone die. So I had to take a vacation after that.
Yes.
That's just one thing I don't like, seeing people die.
Right.
And so it had a little negative impact on me. I needed a vacation, so I went to pick up a car, and I wound up becoming a witness against the police for homicide before I met them. But anyway, Matt drove down in his black Beamer from Chicago. I wound up meeting him. I thought I was going to meet some little geeky looking guy. No, this guy really had stuff together physically, as well as mentally. I mean, Matt Darrington, to me, excuse my language, is just a badass gentleman. He was best knight in shining armor. I really, really, really liked the guy. I mean, he was just come from a good family. You could tell his upbringing was just really good, functional Christian family.
She deserved that.
With Beth, because she was too ashamed to tell someone, a guy, they didn't know that what had happened to her whenever her mother and dad were married. But what I got out of her in that was, after she turned 6 years old, she had on a little red dress one day. John came in to pick her up, and he put his hand up into her dress and grabbed her,
Right.
And she didn't know what was going on, and she first thought it was, unintentional. Then it got more frequent, and that's when it got out of hand. And she never would tell her mother until one day, her younger sister Melody was in a dress. I forgot what the age difference is between two girls. And when John did the same thing and put his hand up her dress, that's when she went and told their mother.
He did it right in front. He did it right in front of Beth.
Apparently so. And I don't think he intentionally did it in front of Beth. I just think that Beth walked in right when he did it.
Right.
That he didn't do it intentionally in front of Beth, but Beth had just walked in as he did it.
Right.
So that's when she went and told Lucy, and of course Lucy she wound up getting with Jay Ramsey, John's dad. And believe it or not, Jay came down and helped her and the children relocate to Virginia.
And that's kind of hard to believe since he was into the pedophilia ring himself.
That's right. Well, Matt didn't have a lot of good things to say about him neither. And so then he wasn't no saint, but they did really get more into the details with Jay than they did with her dad. But the funny thing was, whenever I met her the evening before, she was in her friend Paula's Lugio, the girl that she went to grammar school in Marietta. She had borrowed her automobile to go there and meet me at the Waffle House. It was kind of strange because it had been at least 8-9 months since I had been in there, and I went in there that evening and popped in on the cook and waitress I used to work with because we really enjoyed working together. We were kind of like friends, so I popped in over there to see how they were doing, and they had told me about this woman who had been coming looking for me, and I'm sitting there baffled. I'm like, what the heck, in my mind, I was like, well, it can't be some type of talent scout, Well, Mama, maybe it was an attorney or something. I kept asking him. I was like, well, is she pretty? Oh, yeah, she's a real pretty young lady, but she's got a boyfriend because he's come in here a couple of times. And I'm like, well, okay, well, it's not a woman who won't try to find me for a hookup. And they were like, well, you just missed her by 30 minutes, and she left her pager number. So they paged her, and that's how we wound up touching base. So Matt laid it out real good. He laid out everything about Jay, what John had done to her, the North Fox Island, the Winchester, Tennessee Boys Farm ordeal. John was involved in that as well.
Yeah, and I did a story on the Oakland, that Tennessee.
They sit there born. Beth, she had to go to, well, before JonBenet was born, Beth had attempted suicide. So she had to go into counseling because she had attempted suicide. So she had all these, I wouldn't say a lot, but she had some dead end relationships that some of the boys was trying to depict her as a slut. And Matt and her were friends back in school, and he wasn't going to go for that. She was a cheerleader, and he was a football player. And he wasn't going to allow anything to happen to his friend Beth. That he started going and seeing her during her recovery and became her protector, then they just fell in love. And there is no way in the world he would drive anywhere in the rain with her in the automobile over 35 miles per hour. He would not do it. They would, if they did run into the rain, he would pull either in a convenience store or restaurant, until they knew that the roads were dry enough to get back on the road and drive. And when I say dry enough, not still wet from the recent rain, but dry is when they would get back on the road. They had spent money on motels sometimes just for pulling in to stay for 2 or 3 hours during the rain. And after it rained, the roads dried, then they would get back in his car and they would go on. Now she wasn't with him. He didn't have any problem driving in the rain without her. Going on or a little over the speed limit. That was no issue. But when she was in the car with him, he was not driving anywhere in a distance in the rain with her. If it was an emergency, they would call an ambulance. If they were to run in that situation, he would not run her to any hospital in an automobile during the rain. They would let an ambulance do it. That is how serious Matt was about protecting his girlfriend, because they wanted to get married. The families were pushing them to get married, but they were afraid to get married because if they got married, then the families were going to push them to have children. And if they had children, well, they was going to have to worry about creepy dad, JonBenet Ramsey.
Mm-hmm.
So they did not want to get married just yet. So what they had found out when she went over and started visiting him more frequently and even started helping Patsy with JonBenet, she would stay overnight. So one night she was sitting outside his study watching television, and he had the door open to his office or study. He called it his study. And she heard him in there on the telephone having a conversation about me. She had found out what had happened to me over there on Bentley Farm. She knew about the 1978 court settlement after my dad countersued George Bentley. And I was supposed to receive $450,000, 6 acres of land on Bentley Farm, and a house that was inhabitable. Didn't have to have up-to-date appliances, but
Right.
Inhabitable, sanitary, inhabitable, by July the 1st of 1996. Well, they had offered my brother Fred the $450,000 to get rid of me. So there was a $450,000 hit off already. So the first time they had tried to contact me, they had held a little Hispanic girl over there around 9 years of age. And they tried to come out and make contact with me for me to assist in rescuing her, but they couldn't make contact with me. Well, when they made contact with me, then they were holding two black teenage boys, one 13 years old from near Orlando, Florida, and the 15-year-old from Birmingham. It could have been the other way around, but either way, one was 13 and one was 15, and one was from Orlando, the other one was from Birmingham, and both had been taken from the foster care system. So they had not even been reported missing, but I guess listed as runaways. So their plan was to get her friend Paula. I was to go to the barn because that barn was well guarded. They had these homeless guys living across the 120 loop to the North Marietta Parkway. It feels like they were homeless, but they were the guardians of that barn. And they were well armed. And the only way to get at it was from behind it without them seeing it. And I had to climb up, go inside and ease my way up into that loft without being seen from the road. And those boys did not want to leave, but they were going to sacrifice and they were going to die. They thought that they was just going to be sex trapped. I said, no, you guys are here to be sacrificed. They're going to kill you. And that is the reason why they had me to untie them and get them out of there. I was to run back in the woods with them above that barn, down the hill, through the poison oak, down into the gully, back up, but not too close to Pike Nursery. But back up to behind the BP. Once it got to the BP, we were supposed to run across below this group of cars that was parked behind it. Well, when we do that, I see that doggone Buick Centurion, a Judge McLaughlin sitting there parked. I holler at these two boys to stop and follow me, and they didn't. They just kept running across, so I cut above the group of cars and run across, and all of a sudden, I hear them drop on the pavement. I hear this like bumblebee fly by the front of my head. So I get on the side of the road and I stop. They're laying in the street dead. McLaughlin gets out of the Buick. Of course, Matt and Beth, they were parked behind the Waffle House. They was going to take one of the boys while I ran with the other one further up Roswell Road to the East Lake Shopping Center. And that's where Paula was going to be waiting on me. That way, we didn't have no teenagers in one vehicle. That way, if something happened to three of us, another three of us was able to get them over there to that, I'm trying to think of the name of it. Over there used to be Southern Polytech, but it's a part of Kennesaw State University today. They converted it into one. Liaison or some of the U.S. military. They didn't want to take them to the police department because the police were involved.
Right.
So we were going to take them there.
And they made it.
When we had planned this out with Paula,
Right.
Beth asked us, well, should I tell my brother, John Andrew? And we were like, no, whatever you do not tell your little brother until afterwards. But he needs to know. Well, no, he don't need to know until after. We sat there and we told her, all three of us, told her not to tell her younger brother.
Right.
Well, she did. And he went to their dad. So about 5 minutes later, here comes John pulling in with John Andrew, Paula following in her little blue Geo. We're sitting there in the parking lot at the Waffle House. When he comes walking up, and he's just shaking his head side at Matt and Paula. And he walked up to Beth, and he goes, Beth, what are you doing here? And I can't remember exactly what she said, but she said something along the lines of, well, we're trying to protect these children. Yeah, but why are you doing this? I'm your dad.
Yeah, this is after she after they did kill the two boys.
Yes, ma'am. He looked at Matt. She couldn't answer. He looked at Matt. He goes, Matt, what in the world, boy? You know, you come from a really good family. You know, really wonderful parents, good church-going Christian people. He goes, this I never would expect out of you, young man. He looked over at Paula. He goes, Paula, young lady, You know, same thing with you. You come from a really good family, really nice family. You know, they may not be good church going people, but they're good people. And he pointed at me, he goes, him, I can understand. I can understand his motive. But you, young lady, I don't understand. I want a full explanation. And she goes, well, you know what you used to do to me when I was a little girl, Daddy? And he was like, don't you even dare go there. Well, I am. And do you think that I was going to just sit back and allow you to do this to JonBenet? Oh, so this is over JonBenet. So all of this is over JonBenet is what you're saying. And she goes, yes, Dad. Do you know what they would do to me if I was busted? They would put me to death.
He shouldn't do the crime if he didn't want to end up putting up with what he was doing, right?
That's right. State of Georgia would have sentenced him to death for the Atlanta child murders.
Right.
Child trafficking. They would have sentenced him, George, and Ed Bentley Jr., Mike McLaughlin, my cousin Robert, my brother Fred, Roger Nance, Rachel, everybody involved would have been sentenced to death on this mess.
Right.
Including Tiptoe Ted Turner. By the time was off. This was the Georgia.
You said that he was over there at when you went to get your brother's the rescue thing. When you thought your brother was going to be sacrificed, and Ted Turner was over there, right?
Yeah, they were supposed them and a group of friends. And you won't believe who was among their little group of friends that were going to go down there and help rescue those two black teenagers. Of all people, was Rex Harris.
Wow.
He was in that group. And of course, they let them go and took their guns, but they kept Fred and Roger. So my buddy Roddy Miller. And this was the irony of it. We were both in the Fraternal Order of the D-Malay. Southwest Lawrence Masonic Lodge. Ronnie and I both was. His dad was a 32nd degree Mason.
Wow.
So my brother and Roger convinced him to give them the ride down to the Chattahoochee night at West Paces Ferry Pass and let them out. Yeah, I knew it was a suicide mission because we let them out on the Fulton County side of the Chattahoochee. So I knew they were going to be seen when they came back across the bridge there to the North Bank.
Wow.
But nobody wanted to listen to a 16-year-old kid. You know, some of these guys had just graduated high school, some were already in college. So they didn't care what a couple of 16-year-old kids had to say. Ronnie and I, we were telling, man, you know, this is suicide. This is insane.
So tell everybody what John Ramsey threatened to Beth Ramsey now after finding out after all this.
Well, so he looked at her and he goes, so this was all over JonBenet. And she just nodded her head up and down and he goes, well, you know, y'all don't have a lot of time to live because we're going to kill every one of them. He goes, I might let Charles live 2 years if he's lucky. But you three, you're not even going to live to see next Christmas. That I promised the three of you. Now, Beth survived until January of 97. And I'll get to that later. He goes,
Yeah, that's the deal.
but since JonBenet was your main motive over this young lady, you know what I'm going to do with her? We're going to dye her hair blonde after she turns 3. We're going to put her in these beauty pageants that you totally despise because Kathy tried to get that beauty. And when you look at the pictures down in the hand, we're
See, and she had John Bonet did have light hair before it was dyed. I'm fixing to show everybody the picture of Beth Ramsey so everyone can see how she looked and how beautiful that she was as well. Okay, so we get over here. This is Elizabeth Patch, Beth Ramsey. She was born in 1969. She died in 1992. They evidently cremation St. John's Episcopal Cemetery and Cremation Gardens. This is how beautiful she was. She was actually born in the Philippines because her mother was Filipino, right?
yes, ma'am.
And she died in DuPage County, Illinois. And then she was buried over there where John Bonet is buried now as well.
Yeah, they buried her in Marietta over by the old Marietta High School. It was still a high school back then.
Yeah.
It's St. James Episcopal Cemetery.
It says right here Elizabeth was a daughter of Lucinda, Lou, Patch, and John Ramsey. Elizabeth was an airline stewardess. She and her boyfriend, Matthew Darrington, aged 22, died when his BMW collided with a bakery truck near Chicago during bad weather. Well, they want to blame the bad weather. Darrington was driving. The other driver was not sighted. Elizabeth Ramsey died of massive internal injuries. So here she is. All for standing up for John Bonet and rescuing those two boys. Trying to rescue those two boys in which they were killed.
Yeah, because what they were going to do after they got him busted, they was going to get Patsy from that, and they were going to adopt her and dominate and raise them and have children of their own. That was their goal.
Right.
They already knew about their plans to attack the Appleton Marine Federal building and all these other terrorist attacks that they were planning to conduct in the future because we went over that. And they were shocked at that room living under Morganton, Georgia. Um, so we moved up here in spring of 1973, and we wound up moving back down to a fall short corner of 1976. Well, with the baseball game, which I played baseball for Mineral Corps because that school did not have enough players for its baseball team. But the night of Morganton, the school that I did go to, went to play work. I went to support my classmates, uh, in Murphy, which of course Murphy and South Carolina had two baseball teams in the whole region back then, just Murphy and Adams. So, and I believe it was Murphy that won the championship that year. But I don't
Right.
which was the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building. So when I told Beth and Matt this, they couldn't believe it because they knew the Cooks was in part of the plane.
I'm sorry, I had moved the phone over and they were having trouble hearing it, so I'm sorry about that.
Okay, which part?
So repeat that about which part was that y'all might not have heard. Um, was about Elizabeth, with Beth was actually, he had threatened her. Did y'all hear that part that the daddy had threatened her, and saying that he was going to kill JonBenet Ramsey on the anniversary of the death of Jill Robinson?
Yeah, I
And
haven't got to.
Yeah, I'm just saying if they heard that, but I don't know how much of it that they missed.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, we looked at that death, and Jill Robinson was found on December the 26th, and that's when John Bonet was found, December 26th.
Yeah, 1976 and 1996, 20-year anniversary, just like John said he would do. He
Yep.
told her he was going to dress her up like a beauty queen, dye her hair blonde, rounce her around like a beauty queen, and he was going to pass her around um, like a hooker in a brothel. And he was going to sell her to one of these big, rich billionaires to have this way with her. He was going to have her killed on the anniversary of Jill Robinson.
Oh, okay. And right here, I have her obituary. Y'all mind if I read that? Um, this is Beth's obituary, okay? Miss Elizabeth Beth Potch Ramsey, age 22, died Wednesday, January the 8th, as a result of injuries sustained from an automobile accident. But they got them as close friends, but that was really her fiance. Matthew,
Mm-hmm.
it's got Dellington, but it's not Dellington, it's Darrington. So in the obituary, they got his name wrong. They put Dellington.
Yeah, it's Darrington.
Yes, of Chicago, Illinois, was also killed. Memorial services will be at First Presbyterian Church in Marietta on Saturday, January 11th at 2 p.m., with Dr. James O. Speed and Dr. Frank Harrington officiating. Miss Ramsey was a 1987 graduate of Wheeler High School in Marietta, where she was captain of the varsity cheerleading squad. Beth was a graduate from Miami University of Oxford, Ohio in 1991 from the School of Finance. She was a member of Kappa Alpha Theta sorority, Alpha Lambda Delta, and Pi Eta Sigma honorary fraternity. In addition, she participated in the Summer Aboard Study Program in London, England upon graduation. Beth was employed as a flight attendant with Delta Airlines. Beth is the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. John B. Ramsey, Patsy, and Miss Lucinda L. Johnson. Lucinda L. Johnson, which was the Patsy, was actually her birth mom. It's not Patsy. Patsy is the stepmom. I want to reiterate that, okay? Lucinda, which is Lucy, was
Mm-hmm.
is Beth Ramsey's mother, and also John Andrews' mother and Melinda's mother, right?
That's right.
So
Yeah,
it's
I said Melody, but yeah, it is Melinda.
yeah, it says Melinda right here, so I think it. Uh, so other survivors include two sisters, Melinda Jeanette Ramsey. It's a different way of spelling Jeanette, Gennett, and JonBenet Ramsey of Atlanta, Georgia. Two brothers, John Andrew Ramsey, which is Lucy's. Um, that's her full-blooded, uh, fast full-blooded, and Burke Hamilton Ramsey of Atlanta. Burke is really Patsy Ramsey's child, right? So JonBenet and Burke were the only two children of those two, right?
That's right.
Okay.
My understanding, John only had 5 children that I'm aware. He could have more.
Yeah, as much as he raped people, yeah.
Well, rumors have it, and I heard it from Beth, and I heard it from others. Even Nancy Grace, when she was prosecutor with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office, even had a claim.
Wow. There's like also the Mr. and Mrs. James D. Ramsey, a son. That's the paternal grandparents, Mr. and Mrs. James D. Ramsey of Sun City, Florida. So you talking to is Lucinda still living in Marietta, or did she move elsewhere?
No, she couldn't stand Georgia, according to what Beth said. She did not like the people that John hung with in Atlanta.
Yeah, because it's got her as living in Marietta, Georgia during Beth's thing here.
Well, she may have been. I'm unclear where Lucy lived. I know that Beth was still living up there close to Chicago, so I was under the impression that's where Lucy was still living at.
Yeah, it's got Mrs. Lucinda L. Johnson of Marietta, Georgia. And it's got, let's see, the maternal grandparents are Mr. and Mrs. Donald R. Pugh, Paugh, of Roswell, Georgia.
Pew.
Pugh. Is that how?
P-U-G-H is Pew.
Yeah, I think they got it spelled wrong because it's really supposed to be posh, wasn't it?
Probably Posh. Yeah.
Of Roswell, Georgia. Other relatives include Mr. and Mrs. Jeff Ramsey of Marietta, Mr. and Mrs. James L. Burkhart of Columbus, Ohio, Mrs. Gwen L. Burkett of Orlando, Florida, Mr. and Mrs. Grant Davis of Marietta, and Mrs. Pamela Bow, Baugh, of Dunwoody. In lieu of flowers, donations to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation are being encouraged. Friends may call from 3 p.m. Until 5 p.m. It's kind of weird that they're putting a donation towards cystic fibrosis. I wish they would have put it towards that. And I want to let people know also for the fact that when you were doing this help for children and trying to get the death penalty for against the people for um, sex, sexual abuse, right? You
Well,
specifically had asked John Ramsey if he could use, if y'all could use JonBenet's as a her picture, right?
one of the mascots, we had quite a few children that we wanted to use, something that was from Georgia.
And tell us his answer to that.
Oh, they threatened to sue us.
Well, if they were innocent, why would they not want it passed about whoever killed their daughter? You know.
Well, yeah, I kind of did that on purpose because I wanted John. I just want to call it John Doe number 2 of the Oklahoma City Bombers. I wanted John to see exactly what kind of people the Ramsey were, and he got a very, very, very rude awakening. Um, it was actually, um, you know, anybody would have killed him when he was stalking their mother for execution. And he was stalking my mother to execute her in 2000. So if I came back to Marietta, Georgia from Murphy, North Carolina and started, as they call it, running my mouth about the counterterrorism and my position in North Carolina state government, they were going to execute my mother.
Wow.
So John was the one who was stalking her for execution, but he was renting a place from some friends of mine.
Yeah.
So I didn't kill him. I made him think I was going to kill him. I could have very easily killed him, but I didn't because he was actually 2 days after my birthday again, 1997. My buddy Eric Kiss was lured from Dawsonville, Georgia, by my brother Fred and Roger Nance. They lured us out to the secluded area just inside the Forsyth County line and almost had us executed by Eric Rudolph and Jeff Cook of Murphy Build Supply.
Wow. Yeah, you spoke before of how um, the bombings and over there that Eric Rudolph. Now, since you bring up Eric Rudolph's name, I got a question for you here. How did you know about Hunter Biden and Eric Rudolph's cocaine habit?
Well, what had happened was they tried to hit the ball ground Little League baseball game on June the 3rd of 1997. And I showed up over there and messed up that attack.
Okay, who was the ones that was trying to do that?
That was Joey Davis, the anonymous caller to the Centennial Park attack. Jeff Cook, Matt McRae of Radio Shack, and Eric Rudolph, who worked for Zell Millers and Shirley Carver. Eric Rudolph was also JonBenet's water skiing instructor up there on Lake Chattooga.
Wow.
In Georgia during the summer of 1996.
Yeah, and he also did water ski instruction. I mean, the other kind of ski instruction, I think, in Colorado too, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure, but
probably because he and John just did quite a bit of work out there for like Big Ray Duncan, the founder of Duncan Oil, and of course, you know, Big Ray's brother Sam lives there in Murphy, North Carolina. He has the last gas station left at the Big D convenience stores that they sold off, I think, in 2018 or 2017. They sold off all the Big D convenience stores. Well, Sam kept his gas station there in Murphy, nearby his house.
Who was it that actually walked in with Hunter and his BDDs or Fruit of Loons and also Eric Rudolph? Who was that walked in on them?
Well, that was my brother Fred, John, Roger Nance, Mike Cook, Murphy Build Supply, and I forgot who else was with them when they walked in there.
And what was said? What was said?
I mean, I wasn't there. I can't remember who all was actually with them, but John was. And they went in there, and Matt McRae was in the room part. Eric and Hunter, they weren't nowhere around. So Fred, everybody else, well, where's Eric and Hunter at? Well, they're in the bathroom. So Fred goes over and opens up the bathroom door. There's their clothes in a pile on the floor. Eric is sitting on the sink. Hunter's sitting on the toilet, and they're sitting there smoking a crack pipe.
Yeah.
And dressed only in their BVDs. And it's my understanding, we're equipped with skid marks in the rear, by the way. But
yeah.
And that's how they gained the reputation of being lovers. You know, people like my brother Fred and Roger, I don't know if Hunter and Eric were actually like that. I mean, they probably were, for all I know. I believe that my brother Fred was bisexual. I mean, I honestly really think that even though, you know, he had married and had children and all, that was just a ruse to cover what he really was. I know he was a child rapist and a child murderer.
Right. And
so to me, if you're willing to go that far, I don't think you're going to be discretional about which gender you're going to have relations with if you're going to go to that level with both boys and girls.
Right.
So.
And also, before we get on back to JonBenet, I got a couple of questions to ask you. How did you work with the FBI prior?
Well, what had happened was after the death of Beth and that I came back to Marietta for a couple of days to visit with my parents when I was still working out in Athens. My dad told me, well, Fred wants you to go on a ride with him up to Ohio or somewhere like that on business. I said, business for what? I work in sales out in Athens. I don't work for Fred.
Exactly.
But yeah, well, he wants you to go for a ride, some type of job he wants you to go look at. Well, what he did was he drove me up there to the place in the area where they had died in that incident, and he sat there, and I think the guy's name was Larry Rowan, and if I remember correctly, Terry Hobbs, the stepdad of Stevie Branch, one of the victims of the West Memphis 3 homicides, was involved there in that mess too.
Wow.
And he drove me all the way up there like he was going to meet with the guy that was driving the truck. I actually think his name was Mike Jacoby, but it went by Larry Rowan. There was 2 brothers that went by the last name Rowans, or Rowans, however you want to pronounce it, but that's not their real names. That was just their alias, like Frank Floyd's was Bill Ramsey.
Yeah, Frank Lloyd's had a lot of different names, even Brandon and other names, especially when he kidnapped that little 4-year-old little girl, and later on married her. And then killed her, and then I think he was probably the one that did a hit and run. I bet your life on it. And her case is still unsolved. And then it went and picked up her son later on, years later. And guess what? Then he ended up murdering him the same day he went and got her from school.
Yeah. Yeah, he died in prison in Florida.
Right. So you ended up working with them after.
Well, yeah. What had happened was when I got married, my first wife there from Evergreen, Alabama. I had turned down their $4.5 million worth of hush money. They had determined the reason why they wanted me dead, they was not going to give up any of that land on their farm.
And it's still supposed to go to you, and that's where, what is her name again? Is her last name Duncan or? No, the one that's even threatened to me that I need to be quiet and all this. And there's a Nance's. Okay, it's a Nance's that's actually got the property that's supposed to be yours, right?
No, that's Alice Summerer. That's a member of the Bentley family. She's an attorney in Marietta.
He's saying they can't hear you now.
That is Alice Summerer, whose name that farm is in right now. I think that's maybe Ed Bentley's sister.
Is this any better, y'all? You gotta speak now, right? So we can see if they can see at least light it out. Can y'all hear?
Yeah, is that better?
Can y'all hear him any better? I'll unplug the phone from the charger. Bucket, can you hear him okay? Everybody that can hear him, please put a 1. Can y'all hear him? Keep saying testing, testing, okay?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now? It feels like a browsing commercial. Hello, everybody. Can you hear him now? Testing, testing. And I have no way to test. That's what says that stinks, Because I'm on my phone, talking to you, and I'm on a computer there. So I'm depending on the people to tell me whether or not they could hear you.
Yeah, can they hear you?
Say it again.
Yeah, find out if they can hear you. Maybe it's something technical on your computer
Yeah, I had to put it. Maybe try it again.
Can y'all hear either of us? Get one.
Can y'all hear him now? Can you move closer to your phone?
I've got my mouth right up to it.
Okay. Come on, y'all. I see it moving now, up there where it wasn't moving a second ago.
Mm-hmm.
So try it again.
Okay, testing 1, 2.
What I might have to do is hang up and call you right back or something. We'll try that, okay?
Sure do that.
Okay. I think I'm gonna restart my phone anyway too, right quick. And so y'all just give me a few seconds. So we'll do that and see if that helps with the sound, because sometimes that's what happens. Our phones and internet's kind of like get squirrely at times. Oh, you did hear him? Okay. But now, just wait a few minutes. Restarted my phone. Do y'all have any particular questions after he's going to get on with talking? Let me see. Get back over here to JonBenet Charles Rogers. Okay, here we go.
Hello?
Is this any better now? Okay, try it.
Testing 1, 2. Can everybody hear me? Hit a 1.
Okay. Could you hear? Put a one up if you can hear him. Keep talking so that they can see if they hear you. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, they hear
All
you.
right.
They hear you. Okay.
Okay. Well, while I was living in Evergreen, Alabama,
Thank you.
wound up moving next county up from another one of their child porn operations there in Andalusia, Alabama. So when I turned down the $4.5 million hush money they had offered me after the murders of Beth and Matt
Darrington.
I told them I was going to move out of Georgia and start my life over elsewhere. And I never would say another word unless I ran across another one of their child trafficking operations. And I'd be danged if I didn't wind up moving a county north of one.
And that's in Andalusia, right?
Yes, ma'am, Covington County, Alabama. I was living in Conecuh.
Okay, that's how you pronounce it. I just always called it Conecuh.
Yeah, Conecuh. CUH. That's Conecuh County.
Okay.
Yeah. So they decided they were going to come down there and kill me anyway. Had a car chase when I was working out in Montgomery. Where my brother, Roger Dance, and some other guys, Mike McRae and Eric Rudolph, chased me there in latter part of 1994. And of course, I played chicken with them, flip my car. I pulled a little chum rocker stuff, the Rockford Files, used to do this for now.
So is that how how did the FBI get involved with contacting you to get you to work with them over a particular thing?
what had happened on November, I think it was around November 17th or November the 19th of 1995, I met with Agent Ron Hines at the Evergreen, Alabama field office and of the ABI, the Alabama Bureau of Investigation. And I made my report to them about their little child trafficking operation over there in Andalusia, Alabama. So around January or February 96, he wound up suffering a massive heart attack. So he had to take
Who Pines did?
Yes, ma'am. So he had to take an early retirement from the ABI. So Tom Hall, who was sheriff of Connecticut County at the time, put one of his deputies over there to replace Pines for the ABI.
Uh-huh.
Well, this agent went in there and he found my file that had met with Pines and gave my reports. And one of my reports included my ex-wife's youngest maternal uncle, Andy Etheridge, Andrew Jackson Etheridge. You can pull this up on Google. He got convicted in 2005 for 3 counts of first-degree sodomy.
Oh, man.
1 out of 8 victims that had come forward, and she was the youngest. And Tommy Chapman, their cousin, is the same district attorney in the movie Just Mercy.
Yes.
That was another one of my ex's cousins, or mom's second cousin.
Yeah, and I thought he was a good guy when I kept seeing him on the commercials and the ads and everything. I think at times Channel 31 up in Huntsville, Alabama, interviewed him quite a bit.
Yeah, they were buttering him up to become governor of Alabama.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yes.
Yeah, I saw you shit on that.
Thank you.
Well, anyway, rumors were he liked his as young as 9.
Ew, gross.
And Andy's was as young as 5.
Oh.
And I mean, I don't think there's any family that is really immune to this. Something that's been going on for thousands of years. It's more coming to light today than it's ever been in modern history. Because it's apparent that I had at least 2 or 1 on each side of my family. My brother Fred Rogers, and on my mother's side, Robert Beach. Which he's not even blood kin.
Yeah, he was adopted.
My Uncle James.
Yes.
So I'm not even blood relation to Wayne, Frankie, and Robert.
He adopted all 3 of those?
Yes, man. When he married their mother and has to leave, he adopted them because their daddy was local. And of course, she miscarried with their son that they were going to name John. But when my Uncle James, he was employed with the water department of Cobb County, and he worked the prisoners out of the work camp.
Uh-huh.
So he actually carried a badge, even though he worked at the water department. And he had the utility truck with the blue light on his utility truck. He could actually make a traffic stop and write a citation, and would do so.
Even though he didn't really supposed to have the authority, right?
Well, yeah, he had that authority as a law enforcement officer, even though he worked for the water department because he worked the prisoners out at the work camp.
Oh.
So he was kind of like, field supervisor of prisoners, like you see in the movies of the chain gang out there with the guns and stuff working the prisons, which they didn't go to that extreme.
Right.
But he had arresting authority. He could write tickets. He could arrest someone. If he saw someone breaking the law, he could arrest them and have a deputy come out and pick them up.
That's so sick. See, it's so sick about it. Like, who would you call? The police. Okay, the police. There's a sheriff right there. There's this other police officer. There's Judge McLaughlin. There's all these higher ups like John Ramsey and Monica Graff and all these other people. And Duncan from Duncan Oil. You know, when he said to Duncan, he means the guy that from Duncan Oil, really big, high polluting stuff. Okay. Roger Nance, I'm not sure what kind of job thing that he did.
Well, you're talking people like Arthur Blank, owner of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I don't know who all was actually there. I don't know if Jelaine Maxwell was there or not when JonBenet was murdered. I don't know if Jeff Epstein was there when JonBenet was murdered. But I know that they were all part of the same network, um, the same group of pedophiles and child sex traffickers.
Yep,
Bernie Marcus, the CEO of Atlanta Aquarium, who just passed away a couple of weeks ago, 94 years of age. He was involved in this human trafficking stuff. Ron Brill.
We seen all these. We seen all these pictures. Well, one in particular where you see JonBenet, and you told me where this was at in the picture. And right behind her, like sitting in a chair, looking the other direction, you see the side view of her, look like Ghislaine Maxwell, but Snopes. Yeah. Okay. Let me finish. Let me finish. Okay. Then Snopes tries to say and discredit it, said it's not legitimate, that it's false and everything. But we know it's not a conspiracy theory. We know it's real, and I'll let you go ahead and.
Well, why I know it's Ghislaine is because a lot of the business owners over in Hiawassee, Georgia, who's had owned restaurants where the Ramsey used to go and eat, saw Eric Rudolph and Ghislaine Maxwell in there having dinner with the Ramseys. Now, the day after the Centennial Park attack, I had stopped at the Huddle House up in Blairsville, Georgia, which I had worked there back in 1989, there for a while when I was living up there.
Right.
And so I went over there to pop in to see if anybody I used to work with were still working there, or any of the customers I knew was in there, which I didn't run into anybody I knew. It was owned by Larry Shapansky when I worked for him when he had his franchise. And but I didn't even see this couple when they came in. I must have been in the restroom or something, but I ate a meal and I went up and paid and walked outside and lit up a cigarette, was standing out behind my truck, just looking around, looking how much traffic had changed because it was, a lot of traffic. They had built at Ingalls and a Home Depot, and the place had changed. So I was sitting out there smoking a cigarette. Well, I see this guy walking out with this young woman with this blonde wig, this single body miniskirt hugger suit. I can't think of the name that you call them. Real famous for young women and to wear, and prostitutes and all that. She was in these high heels with these white frame rose-colored sunglasses, which she wouldn't look me when they're walking. So they go walking by. It was Jeff Epstein.
Wow.
So they go walking by. He's in a red Mercedes convertible with a black top, and it was down. And I'm thinking this woman's like maybe 19 to 20 years old because of her build.
Right.
So right when she gets into the passenger side door, she looks back at me, and I saw her face. I'm like, holy cow, she cannot be no more than 14 years old. And I was right. I'm not going to say her last name, but her first name was Jim.
Uh-huh.
Her mother's from Nantahala. Her daddy's from Milton, Georgia. She was a figure skater. She got fired from the Waffle House over in Johns Creek off the Jones Bridge Road about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. She was working over there as a waitress. She never married. I don't think she ever had any children. Beautiful young lady. She is still a beautiful lady in her 40s. Bless her heart.
Yeah, I can imagine the heck that she's had to go through, and it might be hard for her to trust anybody, you know?
Well, she was madly in love with Eric Rudolph. She was another one of his water skiing students that he had sexually assaulted. He started teaching her water skiing and lessons in 1994 when she was 12 years old.
Wow.
And he didn't do anything with her until 1996. And he had that poor girl convinced that when everything got done and all finished, that she was going to be his one and only. They were going to get married and have children and all. She would have killed for him. But she wasn't even supposed to be in the Huddle House that afternoon. I interviewed her twice back in 1999, there in September, after my confrontation up there. And if I remember correctly, this was after Frank Sheldon, Andy Strassmeyer, and Dave Holloway got killed in my defense. And of course, Sheldon is buried there off of Highway 74, just out past the 4-lane east of Andrews in a 2-lane area there, just around 90 feet off the side of the road. They wound up burying him now. Robert Millar brought his caravan of delinquents out from Elohim City, going to claim all 3 of their bodies because the locals wouldn't allow them to kill me. They left us for Sheldon's body, which we know Sheldon's supposed to be dead and buried out in New Amsterdam. So location is the reason why I call him the zombie.
Yeah, they
had to kill him again September the 23rd, 1999.
Yeah, some of them take their deaths to make us think like, you ain't got to worry about him. You know, he's dead. You know, you got to worry about him.
Yeah. But he's not buried in New Amsterdam. He's buried in North Carolina.
Wow.
East of Andrews. But Andy DeCrott and Dave Holloway, CIA, they're buried in Elohim City.
Yeah.
So because the locals wouldn't let them kill me, they left us Sheldon's body. They took the other 2 back.
So they wanted your help in catching some of these people, or what was it?
Well, what it was the morning of April the 19th, 1995. I got up in the morning, cooking my breakfast. My wife had already taken our daughter, had left for her job. She was working for Judy Bond over in Red Level, Alabama. And, I take that back. That's right. She was going to school. She had already been laid off and had already received her benefits and was going to Ed Reed Technical School there in Evergreen, Alabama.
Right.
Studying business. That's right.
Thank you, Eric.
So she had already left with my daughter. And I sitting there watching the news, and sure enough, there's the bombing of the Apple Murray Federal Building. Well, what's the first thing I do? I'm like, son of a gun.
And where was that located at?
Huh?
And where's that located at?
Oklahoma City.
Okay, that's over there where my friend had his fiance killed in that bombing, remember?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember talking to your friend.
Yeah.
So anyway, I go over and I pick up the phone and I call the FBI. And I told the FBI, left on my contact information and all. So in the event this Mike Cook guy, Murphy Building Supply, was involved, contact me.
Uh-huh.
So after Ron Pines suffered his heart attack, after the new agent comes in, appointed by Tom Hall, takes over. He tells my in-laws about my reports of Pines, about Andy, about the Rhonda Walker deal down there in Andalusia. They were trying to make a porn star out of her when she was 14 years old.
Right.
John Mark Carr, Bill Monograph, John Ramsey, same bunch.
Right.
I did not know this at the time. Okay. I found this out in 97, by the way. And I did not know why they were down there tracing me around trying to kill me. It was because of that. But they wound up using Judge McLaughlin's Buick Centurion when he crashed into Grady Lynn and Willa D. Ross's brick mailbox down there. It was the U.S. DOT road contractor for the state of Alabama, of all people. That's whose brick mailbox Judge McLaughlin totaled his automobile out trying to chase me into one of those old UPS delivery trucks.
He's lucky that he didn't die with his head almost going into that brick mailbox itself.
Oh, yeah. During that raid at my house in 2013, he said if his head had not hit that bent window and hit that brick mailbox, it would have busted like a cantaloupe.
It would have been no love lost. And I'm sorry I shouldn't have said that. But
yeah, I would have shed any tears. If I had known that his right arm was paralyzed and was barely able to hang on to that 357, I would have walked over there and I probably would have took that 357 from him and shot him right then and there.
Yeah.
And just jumped in my car and leave.
Right.
But I didn't even stick around to talk to the deputies. Willadine, she was still in her bathrobe and her house shoes, and she come walking out of her house, and I was acting like I didn't know her. I was like, "Oh man, I'm sorry about your brick mailbox. This is a buddy of mine from up in Marietta. We were just down here racing around and playing. But he's got insurance, right, Mike? You do have insurance done. I'm acting like I don't even know the lady,
Right.
And she was a customer of mine,
Yeah. You didn't try to save her life or anything like that, because she could have been, like a witness or trying to protect you or whatever, and she could have been killed too.
Mm-hmm. But they lost the 1974 Pontiac Le Mans. They lost the 1979 and a 1983 Z28. The two Z28s, they were chasing me in. I had an 82 Z28, junky crossfire injection, but at least it had the high performance chip in it. So it ran like a scalded hog. When McLaughlin crashed his Buick, I was driving an 83 Pontiac Grand Prix SJ White with T-tops. I still miss that car.
Right.
And I was no match for that big 455, but that tricky road right there at Brook and Paul Road down in the community of Paul, Alabama, anyone drives it, they'll see how tricky that road is, because Grady and Willadine's fence, the fence goes straight and the road turns left. And it dips down. So if you're right up on two car lengths behind somebody, you're not going to see what's in front of them in that dip before that driveway and the left curves there.
Hey,
so I just drove my car straight center the brick mailbox and whipped it over at the last moment, and he could not avoid missing that mailbox. So that's how Judge McLaughlin totaled out his Buick Centurion that I witnessed him killing that one boy in back in 1980. And he was driving whenever they killed those two black teenagers over there that escaped from Bentley Farm.
Right. Could I ask you one thing? Okay, I'm not sure who it was that told you, and I know you want to protect the person's identity on them being a witness on what happened to JonBenet when they were there. Um, could you give us a rundown, rough draft of what was said without giving out the different names for said and such?
Well, I heard from quite a few people who was out there in Boulder um, during the Christmas holidays. There was like three parties, one next door to the Whites, two down the street, and there was this corner house that was vacant that some homeless people had taken up in, but they had chased them out to make that the drug house because all the other people who hosted parties, they didn't want drugs at their parties, so they used this vacant house down the street as the drug house.
Yes.
And that is the house that JonBenet was actually murdered at. She was not murdered at home.
If anybody else is in here, please say hello because we like to say hello and know that you're in here. I know there's got two people watching right now.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, you wanted to know how I got dragged in and working with the FBI. So on July the 15th, 1996, I was working out of the Electrolux branch in Pensacola, Florida. After the morning meeting, my manager's wife told me I'd received a call from the FBI. And she gave me the number to call back, which there was a sub office there in Pensacola from the Mobile field office. So I called back. It was this agent by the name of Bob Nettles.
Uh-huh.
Wanted to meet with me out there just at the north tip of Pensacola Bay. Trying to think the name of that highway that cuts over from 9 Mile Road over into Base, Florida, right there. But there was this dirt road just past there. You made a left over, pulled up in there, and that's where I wound up meeting them at over there off that dirt road. Well, it was Jerry Watson of the Monroeville satellite office, Bob Nettleson, the director of the Mobile FBI. And they said I had called in about the stuff about this, child pornography operation. So I'm sitting there and I'm telling them about, what I had discovered, about this girl, Rhonda Walker, who at that time was 16 then. And how they had used her and some of the other girls down there in some of their adult movies. And I also told them about what had happened, about me also reporting, my wife's youngest maternal uncle as well to the, Agent Pines and Tommy Chapman's involvement in it. And it was like, well, there's not a whole lot we're going to be able to do about it, Tommy Chapman. I was like, I see. So I looked at Jerry, which I knew some of Jerry's relatives down there because, some of them were customers tonight. I had never met him before. This is the first time I ever met the guy. And I said, well, I got a question for you. He goes, what's that? I said, were y'all able to find out anything else about who blew up that government building out there in Oklahoma City? And he's like, well, no, that's still under investigation. We cannot leak any information out to anyone about that. Why, do you know something? And I was like, yeah, I've been having these strange dreams about some civil war breaking out up there in Murphy, North Carolina. And he just looked at me real funny. He goes, those are some pretty accurate, strange dreams, if you ask me. Just wait here a minute. So he goes walking back over to the red Lincoln. He gets in, he talks to the other two gentlemen, which is Bob Nettles and the director. They get out. About 5 minutes later, they come walking over there. And they're like, we're going to make an exception of a golden rule. We're going to share some information with you, very confidential. You don't need to share with anybody else. But the people responsible for the bombing of the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building, they start naming them off. Well, up comes the names: Sam Duncan, Doug McRae, which these people, I knew Sam ever since I was 8 years old. I was kind of surprised. But I didn't know Doug McRae. I didn't know the name Matt McRae. I didn't know Joey Davis nor Willard Davis, but Mike Cook, I accused him of going to do this at a baseball game back in 1974.
Right. I remember that.
But they mentioned my friend, who was his cousin's husband, my buddy, Dennis Hagwood. And I looked at them, I'm like, there is no way in the world my buddy Dennis would have anything to do with that. They're like, Dennis? I'm like, yeah, I used to work for Dennis at the Waffle King in Blue Ridge, Georgia. Oh, you do know Dennis? I said, there is no way in the world Dennis would have anything to do with this. Well, his best friend Willard and his boy were involved. I said, well, if he's friends with this guy Willard, I doubt this guy Willard's going to have anything to do with it. Now, his boy may, but not Willard if he's friends with Dennis. And I said, now Mike Cook, I accused him of going to do this at a baseball game back in 1974 and also going to attack the Olympics when it comes to Atlanta. They all three just looked at me like, holy cow, you did what? And I said, here, and I told them. And they're like, holy mackerel, you know what you can do? I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what I got to do. I said, I'm already going through a divorce. I almost broke down in tears when they told me this stuff. I was actually about to cry because I knew what I had to do. I had to cause hostility between my ex. I had to alienate myself from my daughter. And anyway, and that's what I wound up having to do to protect them. And I wound up having a stage a thing that day to where I would go to jail that I could use as a leverage once I got up there. And it did work out in my favor, just like I said it would. But they wanted me to go up there and work for them as a Mo. I said, gentlemen, I can't go up there and work as no Mo. I can't even go up there and work as an agent. I said, those people up there don't even like the FBI. And they're like, well, yeah, you're right about that. I said, now this is what I will do. I am going to have to go up there since I'm going through a divorce and probably stay at my dad's house up in Whittier, North Carolina. So I will transfer over to the Letchelux in Murphy. I said, I already know what's going to happen when I do that. They're, well, what's that? I said, they're not going to hit the Olympics. They had told me they were going to hit the Olympics on the 25th. I said, they're not going to hit the Olympics on the 25th. I said, the moment I step a foot into Letchelux, right up there in Murphy, they're going to postpone it to my daughter's birthday.
Wow.
Try to set me up for it. And they're like, you know how many lives you could save if you did that? All right, sorry about that.
Okay.
Anyway, So I wound up, that's exactly what happened. My first morning was on the 23rd of July, 1996. I was confronted by my cook out in the rear parking lot of my office. He come pulling up over there, telling me that if I was smart, I better leave town right then and there. I was not welcome in Murphy.
Is this where you picture to have to talk about when you were you're like lot of people called you a flake and said you're not a registered, that you're not with the governor of North Carolina or anything? It just goes into that story of how you became at first provisional governor of North Carolina.
Well, what had happened during our discussion down there in Pace, they told me about all these targets that they had planned and also having possession of a 263-pound hydrogen bomb that had been hijacked from a military base up in Virginia.
Wow, that's where they got it from?
That's where they got it from. So the only way that I could had any type of leeway to work with a federal agent or even an agent with any law enforcement agency doesn't have the authority to do any type of negotiations whatsoever with any terrorist organization. Only the president of the United States or the governor of the state have that authority. So we sat there and planned it out. If I got up there and they stopped and they changed the attack from the 25th of July to my daughter's birthday on the 27th, that's when the cases were going to be mine. I was going to be special operations for the FBI. Wow. But I could not receive any money or anything from them. And if it came down to where I could get the hydrogen bomb surrendered and offer them a 20 to 25-year run, right, then the governor of North Carolina was to swear me in his place to go negotiate. Yeah, that's what happened. Wow. That's how I wound up becoming appointed governor of the state of North Carolina. Because what happened on January 28, 1998, was they took truck bomb number 13 and headed to Mobile, Alabama. People who watched the news remembers back then, after they had sentenced and executed Paul Hill Jennings for the bombing, or no, for the murders of Dr. Albritton down there in Pensacola, the abortionist, that they had vowed to bomb the Mobile FBI with a truck bomb like they did the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building. It had already been mentioned on the news. So that was one of their biggest threats. And a lot of people cringed over that thought, especially me. Because I did not want my little girl growing up in a Civil War revolution. I don't know of a whole lot of people who did. So it terrified me, just that thought. So I wound up stopping a total of around 28 or 33 terrorist attacks. Like on March 11th, 1997, for example, on Buford Highway and part of Peachtree Industrial Boulevard in Doraville, Georgia. You had the IRS building, the General Motors assembly plant, and the MARTA rail station with a bridge right there in Doraville. 3 truck bombs were going to be used on them. They were going to kill as many of the 3,200 employees at the GM assembly plant, 168 employees of the IRS, and they were going to blow the bridge there at the MARTA rail to shut down that section of MARTA. All the other um, 9/10 attacks was the Marigas propane distribution facility that was located where the Chamblee Police Department is located today.
Mm-hmm.
That was going to be with a backpack. Mansfield Oil, distribution center, where Delta Airlines had all of its jet fuel stored at. They tried to hit it, but they closed the gate in time with a backpack. There was the fuel farm backpack. My brother Fred and Roger Dance were going to set out detonators at the fuel tanks at Peachtree DeKalb Airport. Of course, you had the Citgo fielding facilities, and of course, the gas stations right there along the corridor. Total of 13 terrorist attacks. I was held hostage for about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours at the Rena Center. They're just south of the 285 with the 3 employees, because immediately after I went to Murphy and started selling up there, I got a call from Easy Rental. Wanted to know if I could come to Atlanta and clean all 8 of their stores' upholstery. So that put me in the perfect position, being a part-time sales rep for Electrolux out of Murphy, because I was already doing work for them down in Pensacola, along with some other places on professional carpet and upholstery cleaning. My Lux job was really part-time. So that put me in the perfect position to shut down their terrorist attacks, because I also wound up picking up Rena Center while I was at it in Atlanta. So even by 2001, in my cleaning service, I had over 48 stores by the time I had Rena Center, Easy Rental, Rentway, and Rental Express.
Yeah.
I was a civilian. I mean, I didn't even want to work in law enforcement. I didn't even want to work for the FBI or with the FBI. That was just not one of the things I ever wanted to do.
It goes and shows that it's more than just sex trafficking. It's more than child sex trafficking. It's more than the rapes. It's more than the child murders. It's more than that. It really goes deep and dark. It's even worse than satanic worship, and also it's all right there in there tied together. It includes the bombings and everything, and the destructions of that, and the devastation. I mean, all these certain people that's in with the sex trafficking that you're mentioning and are here as even in the truck bomb, the buildings being bombed and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, Joey Davis, he was driving Eric Rudolph's pickup truck that morning. He was wearing Pam's brown wig that he sold.
Yeah. Because he loved wearing girls' underwear and stuff like that too. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
He also earned the nickname the Midwestern Huddle House Bandit when he robbed his place of employment back in 2012 up there in Andrews, North Carolina, which was a Huddle House. So he earned that nickname too. And so anyway, yeah, he was staying with Dennis, because Dennis lived across the road from his dad, Willard, and stepmother, Valerie. And June 6, 1996, Dennis come home one evening, because they worked for Dennis at the Waffle King there in Murphy. And Dennis, he had just bought him a fifth Jack Daniels the day before and only had 2 sips out of it. because that's all he wanted whenever he came home from work was to sit down and take a couple of sips of whiskey there and smoke a little bit of observology and watch the evening news before he'd go up, shower up, lay down, and go to bed and get up early the next morning and go to work.
Right.
So he comes home one afternoon. Joey's living with him, by the way, because he was causing problems between his dad and stepmom that, Dennis allowed him to move in over there. So Dennis comes home, sees his bottle of Jack Daniels sitting empty on the kitchen counter. So he's like, well, heck, we're sitting there watching the news. I guess I'll just go up and get the shower. Joey's done drank the liquor, So he goes upstairs, looks in Joey's room. He's nowhere in sight, so he thought he may have walked off somewhere. So he goes walking back into his bedroom there, and lo and behold, laying in his bed is Joey with nothing but Dennis's girlfriend's negligee. Passed out drunk, looking all.
You say busted. Oh man, did he kick him out of the house then, or what?
Oh, he told her, he's like, Joey, you need to get up, get out of Pam's negligee before she gets home. She will kill you. And Joey's like, the guy's like passed out drunk. So, so he keeps trying to get him up before Pam gets home because she was working in Blue Ridge, and he knew she would have a cow when she got there and saw Joey in her negligee. Yeah. So he told me, you don't get out of my bed and out of Pam's negligee. I'm gonna call the law out here. Joey's all right, pass right back out. So he gets two deputies out there. Deputies look at him and say, well, Mr. Hegwood, what do you want us to do with it? He goes, well, get him out of my house. Why? Is there any reason? Yeah, I don't like cross-dressers in my house. So they wound up having to escort him back across Flint Hill Road right there.
Wearing a negligee?
Yeah, wearing the negligee. Did he use the New Women's Healthcare Clinic tag? And here comes Pam pulling up.
Oh,
geez.
geez.
To the driveway, the two deputies are walking him across the street.
Oh, man.
And I asked her there one time, what, Pam, you didn't want your negligee back? And she was like, nah, not after watching that nasty SOB wear that. Heck no.
Oh, my goodness.
But anyway, he's the one who actually hit the new Women's Healthcare Clinic while truck bomb number 13 arrived at the FBI field office in Mobile, Alabama at 9:17 a.m.
Well, I know some people, Eric Rudolph made a lot of the bombs and stuff, but Timothy McVeigh, I think, was the one that got arrested in the Oklahoma City.
Yeah, he was just a getaway driver.
Oh, Timothy McVeigh was getaway.
That wasn't even him driving that truck. He was the getaway driver. That was actually one of the sons of Merle McRae, the owner of Radio Shack.
Oh, wow.
Who looked a lot like Timothy McVeigh.
Ah.
That was actually Eric Rudolph, who they think is really John Doe number 2 of the Oklahoma City bombing. Now, I pick at John, even though he's really not John Doe number 2, he just looks like the sketches. But John worked for Dunkin' Oil. John used to work. John didn't know the Ramseys that well, but he did. He worked.
So what is this John? What is this John's last name?
I prefer not to say just yet.
Okay, so just know that this one is not John Ramsey because he didn't know the Ramseys. Okay, so y'all just know that.
We'll just call this one Johnny Boy because Johnny Johnny has helped me get over 215 children rescued from sex trafficking.
Thank you,
Okay.
Johnny. Thank you, Johnny.
And he also helped me get Jeffy Epstein arrested.
Woohoo.
Johnny Boy. When we formed that coalition in 2005, when we got both of the bills passed.
And you did it down there in Peru too, right? Or
no, that was after I got back from Peru. He found out what I did in Peru in January and February of 2005 when I went down there as a U.S. envoy and brokered Operation Predator with the Toledo administration to former Peruvian Congresswoman Doris Sanchez and Toledo's ambassador of education, Elvie Morales.
And one thing that's kind of really still knocks me off guard too is though after Patsy Ramsey had died, and I don't know what happened to Natalie Holloway's husband, but then John Ramsey and Natalie Holloway's mother got together, right?
Yes, ma'am.
They were lovers and they even had a house in Tennessee. Yada
I don't
yada.
know if they had a house. What the magnitude of their relationship was, if they were living together or not. I know that I was in Miraflores. They're in Peru, about a block from the casino, when, Baron Vandersloot, I call him Vandersloot, by the way.
That's a good name for him.
Yeah, when he met up with Stephanie Flores down there and went up and murdered her that night. I was one block away from him.
Wow. He should have never got out of prison the first time.
No, ma'am, he never should have. And I kind of find it strange how, of all people that, Beth Holloway and John Ramsey looked at.
Yeah, that is kind of shocking to me too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember her going down there and saying that about her kid getting her. I'm wondering if she really thinks that John was not as bad of a person, but surely he had to run into some of the bad people when she was associated with him. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like Epstein and such as.
Well, I've heard rumors. We know how rumors are. Old John Ramsey was part of that. You can't say that for sure unless you were there.
Exactly.
I can tell you what I know about John, because it's not what I heard from somebody else. It's what I've seen with my own eyes and what I've heard with my own ears out of him.
Yes.
Now, that's different.
Yeah, that's different.
I cannot sit here and tell you if he had anything to do with Natalie Holloway's murder or not.
Which I don't believe he did. I don't believe he did. I just think that it's just weird how the two ended up hooking up, later on.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, well, him and her said they broke up because their relationship was based upon, losing two daughters, and was what their relationship was, pretty practically based on. Is why they called it quits. Which, okay, I could buy that, but I'm not going to buy the conspiracy theory that John Ramsey was part of the homicide of Natalie.
Yeah, I don't believe that at all. I don't believe no.
You could probably sell that to Alex Jones,
and you're not going to sell it to me either. No. I just think it's kind of weird, But anyway, when there's been some different things going on the JonBenet case, and it really got me recently. At first, one was thinking that the red mark on JonBenet's face was a cigarette burn. Then they come to find out when I was watching some of these other videos when a police officer had actually said this was similar to what you do with a taser. And he had a mark on her back and had a mark on her face.
Yeah, I'm going to bring that up too, because the October 1996 kickoff meeting for the Golden Division of Electrolux was held in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And while I was up there at that convention, I did purchase a stun gun from one of those shops there in Gatlinburg.
Right.
And later that month, I wound up purchasing a 1994 Plymouth Voyager and dumped the 1985 red and white Dodge pickup truck. We had a tenant down at my dad's commercial development in Woodstock. Her truck was on its last leg, so her engine in her truck was in better shape than the one I had in my Dodgers. Was like a 78, 79 model. So we wound up switching the engines out, put her engine in that, and gave her something more solid to drive.
Oh.
And I got the 94 Plymouth Voyager. But before that, we had our kickoff meeting, which, Sales Olympics is a drive month, is what we always call them. And that's when I purchased that stun gun. So when I was pulling my stuff out of my pickup truck and putting into my van there at my mother's house in Marietta, Fred pulled up, and he wound up stealing my stun gun.
Oh, man.
So I actually believe that, the stun gun that was used on JonBenet was actually a stun gun that my brother stole from me.
Yeah, because they kept trying to do things to try to frame you.
Well, yes, they tried. That's the reason why they postponed the Centennial Park attack from the 25th to my daughter's birthday instead of, doing the attacks, with a larger crowd. They wanted to kill up to 4,000 people, including Kenny Rogers on the 25th. But they wanted to get rid of me, more important. It was more important to them to get rid of me. I'm, developer builder's brat. My dad had a nice sizable estate when he passed away in 2001.
And not only that, you know so many of their secrets and stuff because they told you, and it'd be kind of funny. Like people wonder, like, why did they tell you?
Well, it's funny what people are going to tell you when they think they're about to kill you.
Yeah,
that's the way that works. And I have survived over 22 attempts on my life.
Praise God.
I may not be the baddest guy on the block, but I am one of them. I have put a number of guys in ICUs for broken jaws and broken cheekbones. I put Sam Duncan Jr. in ICU for 5 days. They didn't think he was going to live.
Yeah, then at first he wanted you to go away when he did come to, and then he ended up wanting you to stick around. It's like, okay.
Yeah, we actually thought he died. I have my picture on the White County Jail, where I had 2 separate physical altercations in Helen, Georgia. About 2 months after that, back in June of 1997, because the Cooks was over in Helen that night, and they told some people over there that I was an informant for the FBI for drugs. Right?
Right.
So I had this big old guy, about one of those big old 6'3", cornbread fed rednecks.
Yes.
My favorite ones I love to fight. So he wound up having to be escorted to the hospital in an ambulance. I didn't even get to the next establishment for 10 minutes and had three more of them decide to try to jump me.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, I had one standing there looking stupid because I knocked one of them out. The one who jumped on me and started it broke both of his cheekbones. He come wandering in his doctor's office the next morning, and his doctor told him, "Buddy, you better get over there to the hospital right now. Both of your cheekbones are busted."
Did you ever
So I
get?
wanted to put three of them in the hospital. One standing there looking stupid. So the detectives, I left when the deputy arrived at the second establishment. I told that one woman, I said, "Well, here's your escort." I told her, I said, I wouldn't be driving speed limit trying to get him over to Cleveland to the hospital. And I wouldn't be driving so fast to lose control. And I asked the guys in the bar, I was like, "Has anyone called the sheriff's department yet?" "Oh, yeah, one's on the way." I said, "Well, there's your escort." So when he pulled in, I went out and gave him one of my business cards. And I got a call the following Tuesday. And they sent a detective up there. These guys, the second time, the ones I had in second place, they had jumped on this husband of the newlywed couple a year earlier. And two of them had already served their 16 days in jail. The other one, he was still out on bond. The one who started the fight, he was still on bond. He hadn't pled guilty. He hadn't served 6 days, and he wasn't on probation, but he violated his bond.
Oh.
The other two were already on probation, wasn't even supposed to be in there.
Right.
So they knew I was the same guy that sent old Jethro there the first time. They knew I was the same guy, so they came up to Murphy. I talked with when the detective called me. I thought he was trying to put some charges on me. So I was a little defensive. Going, "Mr. Roger, you don't have to be defensive. I'm not calling that they're trying to trump you up to put charges on you. I just need a statement out of you on these other three guys." And he explained it to me. And he drove up there for me to sign my statement. And he asked me, "Was it okay if we take your picture? We don't have any pictures of you for our deputies to be able to identify you when you're over in our county. So is it okay if we get your picture and put it on our jail?" I said, "Well, I have no problem with that, but I don't want you putting it over by any of your deputies nor your informants." "Oh, no, we won't do that to you. We'll put it out there on the wall by itself." And that's where it stayed until they built the new jail back in 2007 and tore the old one down.
Yeah. Could I ask you a question? Because we've been over 3 hours doing this, do you have any personal stuff that you want to share that people would need to know about the JonBenet Ramsey case?
Well, when it comes to people that are nutcases and that are delusional and all that, you have to kind of question yourself about old Johnny Boy Bennett usually, okay?
Uh-huh.
Because his exact words to Beth, after he told her what he was going to do to JonBenet, was so he could get her back, get Beth back for betraying him over JonBenet, so he would have control of her soul for eternity. So this rascal thinks he's Satan. Now, he very well could be. I cannot sit there and say that he's not.
Uh-huh.
Okay, because only Satan could do something that horrific.
Right.
So I can understand other people's perspective about thinking about me, making this stuff up or trying to pretend to be something that I'm not.
Heck, if I was you, I'd be thinking like, I really don't want to be talking about this stuff, but y'all threw me into this kind of thing,
Yeah, I mean, I sure didn't want to be brought into it. I just like anybody else. I've always wanted to live a normal life. Always wanted a family that I could settle down with, and I always wanted children that I could raise the way that I was raised. I did not have to worry about any members of my family wanting to put their hands on me or do anything sexual to me or anything like that. Now, my mother was verbally and physically abusive. Good grief, she raised one lunatic out of four of us.
You call that Fred?
Mm-hmm. So she did raise one lunatic, and her brother wound up adopting another one. But
Who's your brother?
James,
Oh,
the
okay.
one that adopted Robert.
Yeah, Robert Bitch.
Veach.
Beach,
Yeah, it's
okay.
pronounced Veach, Veitch. It is actually Scottish.
Oh, okay.
But we're actually German. I'm actually a descendant of Queen Victoria II, believe it or not. My great-great-grandfather and great-great-grandmother wanted to come out of the Catholic Church, and if you were royalty, you could not do that. So William II, my great-grandmother's uncle, deployed my great-great-grandfather out on a covert operation where he would get killed. Her mother had her to take, her four children and flee to Scotland, and they assumed the last name Veach, which is Scottish, or of the House of Hague, Haage.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm, that's on my maternal grandfather's side of the family. They're German. So I do know my lineage. And I can understand people kind of questioning, hey, who does this guy think he is, calling himself appointed governor of the state of North Carolina or the provisional governor of the state of North Carolina?
And that's kind of funny because when you were telling me about that, I did a search and then I actually found you on Signal Hire and I showed you the information there. And then you were shocked that because nobody's been able to find it before, and I found it though.
Yeah, I was told after the raid in 2013, members of the governor's office came down to Marietta because they came in there. They removed a lot of my notes and files that I did have on hand, tried to hide my appointment up there. They wanted to completely destroy this, what it was. And they came down, they said, they can't hide your appointment.
Yeah, they
They can
updated.
destroy every document, every file the FBI's got, but they cannot hide your appointment. You're registered as appointed governor of the state of North Carolina, North Carolina Governors Association.
I think it's kind of funny though, after I showed you that, and then I don't know how long the time had passed and everything, and they had updated, and your name still remains on it.
That's right, because they go to the governors associations of each state and all the corporations. I think twice a year to keep their records up to date. They're based out of Poland, not the United States. And so there is no hiding my appointment. I can't sit here and pretend to be something that I'm not.
Exactly.
I wish I could sit here and say, well, I'm just old Charles Rogers, just old Joe from Kokomo, entrepreneur, high school flunk, who worked my way up, by the sweat of my brow, because that's all I've always been is an, ever since I reinvented myself, all I have ever been has been a businessman. I like to work for a living.
Yes.
I like to be, if I'm not outdoors working, I like doing something physical. I'm not the type of guy to be sitting in writing up reports from arresting people, because that's just not my thing. If I wanted to be in law enforcement, I would have got my high school diploma and I would have gone and I would apply to become a cop. I wouldn't have become what I am. Okay. I mean, it's just not. It's not what I was set up to do. It was what I was born to do. That's just the only way I can put it.
Yes. Yes.
There are some
That's
people
very good.
there are some people that form themselves into something, but then there are us that are just born and appointed by God to do what we do. It's just that way.
What was Governor Hunt's first name over there, the one North Carolina governor?
James Baxter Hunt Jr.
There's a reason why I asked that because Alabama, we had a governor too named Governor Hunt. He was Harold Guy Hunt.
Yeah, I think I remember him. He was a governor back in the 90s, wasn't he?
From 1987 to 1993 as the 49th governor.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of weird. You say Governor Hunt and then that other one too,
Yeah, that's kind of funny because my understanding he was a back pointer salesman, wasn't he?
Oh, was he?
That's what I heard. I could be wrong.
Let's see.
But I know that whenever Bentley down there was governor, the next in line that they had in mind was Tommy Chapman. But what had happened with Tommy was I had a mechanic / buddy of mine down there who wanted a job at the Evergreen Police Department. My buddy Tommy Booker was police chief at the time, and he was wanting some officers, and Tracy wanted to go and become a K-9 officer. So I bumped in over there at Tommy one day and told him that Tracy wanted a job with his department as a K-9 officer. He goes, yeah, bring him over. Let him talk about it. I'll be glad to hire him. Because he's got a good background. Well, Tracy went over there and got a job in the Evergreen Police Department as a K-9 officer. Then in 2003, he decided to run for sheriff.
Right.
Well, after his first few days in office, he goes walking into Tommy's office one day. He said, Tommy, we got a problem. Tommy goes, what's that? He goes, we have all of these people here living in this county that have these warrants and these reports to where we can indict and prosecute and convict. And it's too many of them such of a small populated area that we got to do something about this now that I'm sheriff. And Tommy couldn't disagree with him. So he launched the Lantern Project.
Oh, okay.
So he went up and rounded up 11 of them. That's how many of them had. Andy Etheridge was on that list.
Yeah.
Because Tommy had no intentions at all to prosecute Andy. That's how close those two were.
Yes.
So anyway, there was 8 victims, including Andy's former stepdaughter. I'm not going to mention her name. I'm good friends with her and her husband.
Yeah.
Wonderful couple. But he had sexually abused her too when she was a preteen.
Wow.
Tommy didn't prosecute him for these other 7. He prosecuted him for the last victim that had come forward. It started whenever she was 5.
Isn't that kind of crazy how, they could have saved some other people just by prosecuting them and putting them away and stuff, how easier it would have been. But, like, One day I need to go over the Pennsylvania laws and rules and stuff like that with the different sex crimes. I could not believe that some of the sex crimes there, that it was like, um, that it's okay, you cannot, you can be charged for rape of your wife, un unless she's under 16 years of age and you're married. Um, so you cannot be accused of raping a child, and the guy can be an adult. I mean, where do they get these stupid rules from?
Well, a lot of times they vary state to state. Like North Carolina, for example, the age of consent is 16. But on the other hand, you also have the emancipation of a minor clause. Okay. So a legal guardian or parent can take the child before a judge and have her emancipated as a minor.
And not only that, I did a show on this the other day, and there's these loopholes. There's so many states that got it where you cannot marry anybody. No loopholes, no nothing. You cannot marry anybody under the age of 18. They got that certain laws, of which I wish every state in the United States would do that.
Well,
But because like Tennessee said, this guy said I'm not going to sign it, and then he later on, and I've got it on the video on the child marriages in the U.S. And the guy actually said, I would, if I had known that they're doing loopholes where they're actually marrying 13-year-old kids to these grown men and stuff, he said I would have signed it.
Well, yeah, and what is? Well, I'm going to give the FBI some relief about the Richard Jewell case. Okay,
Good.
that was my doing. Okay, when I took on the case July the 30th, 1996, that is when I was officially assigned the case. Was after they, did the attack at Centennial Park on my daughter's birthday. And that's when the case of Oklahoma City and Centennial Parks became my cases. I was driving out toward Copper Basin from Murphy, North Carolina. Copper Basin's there in Tennessee. And I had this little, well, I shouldn't say what kind of automobile, but it was an automobile with three guys in it. Told me to pull over. Pull over. It was the FBI. So I got in the ride. They were trying to get information. I looked at them. I said, guys, what did I tell you buddies down there in Mobile? I can't give you guys any kind of information. I don't know who did that attack yet. So they wanted to know what to do. I said, well, who's this guy who discovered the explosives? Well, his name is Richard Jewell. He's a former Habersham County deputy sheriff. He's he got terminated for citing and arresting people for petty offenses. There was too many complaints issued against him. That they had to terminate him from the department.
Right.
I said, well, what else about him? Well, he's an excellent marksman. I was like, really? Okay. I said, your opinion, what kind of guy is he? Well, he's just, your typical run-of-the-mill country boy, wants to be lawman. I said, okay, well, this is what you do. You make him the media fall guy. Because they were trying to get the media attention to Murphy.
Yes.
That was their ultimate goal, was to get the media's attention on Murphy, North Carolina. So I said, you make him the media fall guy. Well, we can't go in there and arrest him. I said, I didn't say arrest him. I said, make him the media fall guy. Buy me enough time that I can get with my buddies and people up here in these mountains and let them know what the world is going on, so they'll know what's going on, and I can get help out of these people up here. I said, when it comes down to the arrest, don't arrest him. At any point, whatever you do, don't arrest him. Well, he'll turn around and sue us. That's right, he will. I said, now, how much would he get? Altogether, once he sells his story, writes his books and all that, how much is the most money he will make? And they're figuring, well, he might make $350,000, maybe $400,000. I said, okay. Don't you guys think he's worth a whole lot more than that? This before I told them, this is what I asked them. They're like, well, yeah, we would like to see him get more than that. So, well, this is what you do. Make him the media fall guy. Make him look like he wanted to gain favor in order he could be a hero, so he could try to get his job back as a deputy sheriff. So he decided to set the explosives himself. This is what you want the media to say. But do not charge him. That should buy me enough time to get the cooperation out of the people up here I need. I said, how much would he win in a lawsuit like that? Oh, probably around $3.5 million. I said, well, there you go. That will make him a millionaire. So that's what they wound up doing with Rick. So when I went out to Birmingham, when Rudolph entered his plea out there, entered his agreement to return to Atlanta and plead guilty to all the charges, I went out there after I had just arrived, after they had escorted him out of the courtroom into the holding area and allowed Pat Murphy, his mother, to come in there. And Rick was standing out there talking with that one black kid that lost his arm and his mother in the attack. And I went over there, and Rick knew who I was when I walked over. And I wound up, shaking the boy's hand. He went off. And I looked at Rick and I said, well, Mr. Joe, I just wanted to apologize to you.
Yes.
About what happened to you. He goes, no, Charles, you don't owe me an apology. Mr. Wood and Mr. Free explained everything to me, and how important it was that it helped you stop all those terrorist attacks. If I had to do it again, I'd go through it again. At that time, of course, Pat Murphy, she sat back there and started screaming at the top of her lungs at Eric.
Yeah. We'll have to go ahead and close this out soon. We've been about 3 hours and a half, and I'm sure everybody's getting tired and everything.
Well, just let me finish this off, and we'll call it a day.
Okay.
So she's sitting there screaming and yelling at the top of her lungs at Eric. Louis had let her in there thinking she want to have the sobbing, sorrowful mother, that her son that was doing God's will was about to go to prison for the rest of his life. Louis didn't expect to hear what he heard that day. When she hollered out, pedophile, child murder, he peeked around the corner. He didn't even know I was there. And he peeked around the corner and he saw Rick and I standing over there talking. He goes, Charles Rogers, I didn't know you were here, but is that Pat Murphy screaming at Eric? I said, yes, sir. Did I hear this right? Did she call him a pedophile and a child murderer? I said, yes, sir. Well, let me finish talking with this man and lady right here. They were, man and woman prosecutors. He was talking with while Rick and I was talking. So Rick sat there and told me he did not want the $3.5 million. All he wanted was his job back at the Habersham County Sheriff's Department. After he had heard what had happened and how his role was so important in my mission up there in North Carolina. And of course, I finally went walk. Louis called me over, and he was like, "What is it that I said her?" I said, "Well, I hate to say in the presence of a lady." Well, she's a prosecutor. You have any problem with him telling me what set Miss Murphy off at her son Eric? They're like, "No, we're all ears." I said, "Well, over there in the Radio Shack, there on my oldest brother's birthday in 1997, they called me over for a conversation and their admissions to the murders of the boys in West Memphis, Arkansas. Eric asked me if I'd ever sucked the blood out of a dead boy's, what.
Yeah.
I said he denied it to his mother.
It was Eric Rudolph, right? Yeah.
He denied it to his mother, looked her in the eye and denied it to her. He denied it to Mara. But yet he turned around and admitted it to some of his buddies, and his sister overheard it.
Wow.
And those two prosecutors just shook their heads and they went walking off. And that's when I sat there and got Rick reinstated as a deputy with the Habersham County Sheriff's Department. Now, of course, Lynn was not happy about it at all. He did not get his $750,000 on that case that he expected to get. He got real nasty with me. Out of 5 points in Atlanta when I went to that restaurant that day, right there in front of Casey Libby, too, of all people.
Yes.
And started going off on me about it. But Lynn, since he has lost his license to practice law, is releasing a lot of information. That
You're talking about Lynn Wood, am I right or wrong?
That's right. Is corroborating a lot of the stuff that I have released to the public.
Yes. Okay.
So I just wanted to close that with you so everybody can get a pretty good understanding of what really happened with Rick White, a.k.a. Richard Jewell, because we did become friends. Rick and Nancy Schaefer, we started a probe into the Child Protective Services investigation. So
yeah, they both ended up deceased. All right. Well, thank you so much, and lots of love. And we'll have to continue on with some other thing, and you can notify and let the people know of. Like I want to go over Levi Frady's story maybe next time. Okay.
Yeah, that's another one they tried to set me up for with the Centennial Park attack.
Yeah, we'll be sure to. Yeah, we'll have to be sure to let the people know about that. Okay. Well, lots of love. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Likewise, and everybody have a good day.
You do. Thank you. Bye-bye.